The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 24. Davy Jones' Locker. After the mists deposited me in Port Royal, I once again found myself requiring a ship for transport. Like Flint's archipelago, the ocean known as Davy Jones' Locker was filled with hundreds of islands, and limiting myself to one would hardly give me a sense of the domain. Although the governor urged me not to risk encountering the emboldened pirates that traveled the seas, and more than one crew flat out refused to take a woman on board, I was eventually able to find a merchant ship that would carry me. There was further talk of pirates as we began our journey, and, in truth, it was something of a relief when a ship flying a red Jolly Roger attacked us before we even reached our first destination. There was no use forestalling the inevitable. The pirates boarded, bringing down the merchantman's crew with shocking speed and ferocity. Although I was able to fell one of the pirates with an eldritch blast, they eventually forced me to surrender at sword point. It was only when the frenzy of battle died away that I noticed every one of the pirates was a woman. Their captain, Anne Bonny, informed me that I had fought well and thus had a choice. Either I could join her crew and replace the woman I had killed, or she would cut my throat and throw me to the sharks. As only one of these options gave me a chance at survival, I readily agreed to join, planning to make my escape later. I thought at first that I had encountered the Lord of the Realm, a pirate queen of the Locker. It was only later, when I saw the black spot on Captain Bonny's palm and learned its significance, that I knew who truly ruled this sea of bargains and betrayals.
Welcome to Wonderful World of Darklords. I'm Tom.
I'm Rachel.
And we're discussing how to convert Disney movies to Ravenloft domains of dread because this is our best chance at a game that involves a zombie pirate monkey.
Along the way, we'll look at the Darklord, the domain itself, and some plot hooks and adaptation ideas to integrate the setting into your own campaign.
Today's episode, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise.
Except kind of 5, because we never saw it and don't intend to.
I mean, most of America agrees with that decision. We just, look, if 5's great, if you love 5, sound off in the comments.
Yeah.
We'll watch it if people tell us it's great, but that's not the reaction I've been given.
We watched the pitch meeting for it. But,
so,
we watched the original trilogy, and we actually, we both remembered, because we loved the first one. We were in college when it came out because we're old. And then we loved the second one when it came out. The third one we remembered not enjoying, but on a rewatch we liked it better than we remembered. It has flaws, but we liked it a lot better than we remembered liking it. And then we figured, Tom pointed out for the fourth one that it's the one that doesn't have all of the mythology and all of the previously existing characters and everything, so this is the one that's going to look the most like what your D&D
Right, exactly. It's kind of like, okay, I want to have a game that's Pirates of the Caribbean feeling, but I don't want to do the story with the cursed gold or the dead men's chest or Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann. I want to do my own story. That's what this is. So it's actually really helpful to have this as a kind of model for a pirate-style story.
Also, as the credits pointed out, it is suggested by a novel by Tim Powers.
Yes, we'll come back to that. Welcome to the second episode of our Summer Blockbusters series, our second alternative summer series after try weird bonus episode formats because we're traveling a lot last summer. Rolls off the tongue a lot more, Summer Blockbusters. That was a priority. And so we're focusing on live-action Disney movies that we have wanted to do, that we think could make great Ravenloft domains, and this is the actual blockbuster. Of all of the ones we're doing, all 3 episodes, this is the one that busted blocks.
We actually kind of built the live-action theme around, okay, we gotta do pirates.
Yeah, we gotta do pirates.
But it's not something like Home Alone or one of the live-action, spooky Halloween-y kind of movies where it could be no, there's this strong seasonal tie we can bring to it. It's it'd be kind of weird to do a bunch of animated movies and then have Pirates of the Caribbean in September for Talk Like a Pirate Day. Yeah. Which we did consider putting it in September for Talk Like a Pirate Day. But Summer Blockbusters let us have the format that gave us the excuse to do Pirates of the Caribbean.
We, as I mentioned, we're kind of mixing and matching the stuff from different parts of the trilogy and also bringing in some from On Stranger Tides. And so the first thing to establish is kind of the basic narrative framework we're doing, and that is who is going to be our Darklord.
There's so many candidates.
Yeah, there's really good candidates. Yeah. And we even have some alternative stuff to discuss in the AU section.
Yeah, this is like Princess Mononoke. The AU section is going to be a whole lot of alternate Darklords.
So let's talk about who. You're in suspense. Normally not suspense at this part. Let's talk about.
I don't know who's going to be the Darklord of Snow White.
Let's talk about who we chose to be our canon Darklord in a section I like to call
the Lord. The Lord. Captain Bonnie struck me as short-tempered and paranoid, making for sure the slightest sign of something in the water. I had no idea what frightened her so, assuming at first that she had run afoul of some other pirate captain, or perhaps the East India Trading Company, and that she feared she would not survive a skirmish. When I inquired among the crew, they were hesitant at first to divulge their captain's secrets. However, her first mate and lover, Mary Reed, opened up to me in hopes that I could help her captain. I had heard legends of the Davy Jones for whom the locker was named, and thought him to be some local god of the sea and the afterlife, but according to Reed, he was a being of flesh and blood. Centuries ago, Jones had fallen in love with a woman, or the sea, or a woman who was also the sea. This lover had betrayed him, and he had cut out his own heart to ensure that none would ever break it again. With no heart to soften his feelings for his fellow man, Jones became a creature of insatiable cruelty, his features twisting into a form as monstrous as his soul. Jones captains a ship known as the Flying Dutchman, and uses his command of the sea, perhaps a gift from his former lover, to strike bargains with the desperate. He can raise sunken ships from the depths, or rescue the drowning, or, in Bonnie's case, sink a gallows-bound ship with her and Reed in its brig, allowing them to swim free. In exchange, after a given number of years for those not on the brink of death, the bargainer must serve 100 years on the Dutchman, attending to Jones's vicious whims. Over these years of hellish misery, with no sport but causing or enduring suffering, the souls become as cruel and as physically inhuman as Jones himself. Legend says that the one who finds Jones's heart can control him, perhaps allowing them to change the terms of their bargain. This was Bonnie's goal, and she was livid at my insistence that I could not simply mutter a few arcane words to make the heart appear on her deck. Without this miraculous intervention, her only hope was to search for stories of the heart and to spend as much time as possible on land, where Jones has no reach, and neither does the Kraken he is said to command.
It's Davy Jones!
It's Davy Jones!
Davy Jones, he's so great!
He's so great!
And yeah,
that was Toby the Tiger.
He's a great. No, he is so great, and he's so perfect as a Darklord. If you guessed something else, once again, as we said, don't be surprised. There are a ton of options in this franchise.
We're going to talk about a whole bunch of other people when we get to AUs. Believe me, we thought about Barbossa.
Yes, but we picked Davy Jones just because we think of all of these amazing possibilities, he's the most amazing possibility. Because we believe he's the one that kind of best fits our criteria of what makes a good Darklord.
He must have our criteria for what makes a good Darklord, and as we'll talk about when we discuss why we didn't pick Barbossa and some of the other ones, he has kind of a broader scope.
Yes.
Which I guess, does tie into our fourth quality.
Yes. So judging by the blockbusting box office grosses of this actual Blockbuster franchise, you know who Davy Jones is. Most of America seems to, based on ticket sales.
Yes.
But they may not know what a Darklord is, so Rachel, what is a Darklord?
Well, a Darklord is an evil being who commits some kind of act of ultimate darkness that causes the dark powers to say, why, hello, new friend, we want to play with you forever. And so they pluck that evil being up and they place them in a special hell tailor-made just for them. There are some really great Darklords. There are some Darklords who are necromancers who can't do new spells and yet are lords of the Nocturnal Sea. So we're going to discuss what separates the Strahd von Zaroviches from the Meridoffs.
Ropes. Appropriate reference.
Well, it's fine to have him be a Darklord of an island in the Nocturnal Sea. Well, why is he the Darklord of a sea? Anyway. So, the first element is that act of ultimate darkness. And in Strahd's case, it was killing his brother because he wanted to get with his brother's fiancée. It's like a specific evil thing they do, not becoming Darklord by attrition. The second element is what they call in Veneration Guide to Ravenloft the Torment, because we're a Disney podcast, we call it They Got What They Wanted, They Lost What They Had. And in Strahd's case, it's congratulations, your brother is out of the way, you have eternal youth, so you're not too old for Tatiana, but you're too Strahd for Tatiana, and you always will be. Our third element is an element of tragedy or relatability. They're not just evil for the sake of being evil. There's something about them that makes us wince in sympathy. And in Strahd's case, as you're going to be hearing more about with Davy Jones, unrequited love sucks.
It does, yeah.
Although it's a different kind of unrequited love, as we will discuss. And then the fourth element that Meriadoth does not have is that the domain reflects the Dark Lord and their curse in some way. Strahd is not an evil wizard who rules over an ocean domain. He is a spooky vampire who rules over spooky vampire Transylvania. And the domain also reflects his curse of that loneliness. It's a boring mud slump because not only is he lonely because he's missing Tatiana, but also there's not any intellectual equal that lives there. So even if he did get over Tatiana, there'd be nobody for him to get over her with.
With some of these Dark Lords we're adapting, we have to kind of go and like tweak the backstory, change the what specifically they did, make it worse, make it not just straight movie canon. We have these kind of...
So it's like Scar.
Yeah, no, this is just,
right out of the box.
Right out of the box. It's sort of a mix of kind of three things. But the nice for us is those three things are all sort of connected. And you can kind of sum them up as this, like, overall movement, this overall action and choice he's making as this act of ultimate darkness.
Which Dark Lord was it that we described as having a weekend of ultimate darkness? It was one of our previous Dark
Maybe Ernesto
Lords.
de la Cruz?
It might have been Ernesto de la Cruz.
Somebody had a weekend. But yeah, Davy Jones had a weekend of ultimate darkness. But you know, it's not a light switch. It can be a couple of steps. Like, Strahd turned into a vampire, like, killed a bunch of people, then turned into a vampire.
You made a pact of darkness.
Made a pact of darkness, killed people. It's like that. So what we're imagining is it's all connected, we're going to keep saying, with the sort of relationship with Calypso. So the sort of first act of ultimate darkness is the being so hurt that she wasn't there for him, that she kind of abandoned him in his understanding, that he betrayed her to the Brethren Court, that he told them how to bind her in mortal form, so then they would have more mastery of the sea. And then we have this other action, which is like technically a separate action, but not really. On the emotional level, no, it's not. It's the cutting out his heart.
Yeah.
That he cut out his heart and put it in the dead man's chest, so that he wouldn't feel. And
that's even actually, think about, that's kind of him doing the Dark Lord double down, because it's not that he cut out his, Will had that line about after which betrayal did you cut out your heart.
Exactly, yeah.
And it was he didn't want to feel remorse over what he did with Calypso, because he was doing the Dark Lord double down.
Yes, and then we have the sort of triple down, in this case, the rare and beautiful Dark Lord triple down, which is then there's also the turning his back, like in that same moment, in that same emotional action, he turns his back on his responsibilities as Captain of the Flying Dutchman. He stops bringing the souls of people that died at sea over to the other side. And so this isn't just a personal thing, and this isn't just like you're getting revenge on your shiftless girlfriend. This is like you are messing up the entire world. Like you are choosing to condemn thousands of people to an oceanic limbo.
Because you can't get over your breakup.
Right, yes, because you're too emo to do your job. So that's all the movie. We didn't add any of that. That's all the movie, and we're just sort of taking those kind of three specific, technically wrong actions and kind of combining them into a weekend of ultimate darkness, and then when he's finished that process, the mists rise up around this domain, and he has a new job, which he can't not do, which is being Dark Lord of Ravenloft.
Good job, buddy. Good job.
So then we get to the torment, or, since we're a Disney podcast, they got what they wanted, they lost what they had. You know what? You don't have a heart, but you still hurts. It didn't actually help.
No, it did help, and he's gonna prove
I'm gonna prove how much I don't care by, staring pensively at that locket and jamming out on the organ as I pour all my
playing
feels.
Our song.
Yeah, playing our song on the organ, yeah. That's how over her I am.
Looping their song on Spotify and picking it out on his guitar in his room.
And just, clicking the little, green circle with the one above it for, hours. Our song, 10 hours on YouTube. Yeah, that's how over you are. You're just playing your song over and over again, staring at the locket that represents your love. And it still hurts. He still misses her. He still loves her. He still feels intense pain and guilt when he thinks about her. And
just isn't as cute because his heart's not there. He's not shedding tears like he does when Beckett brings in Reed.
So good. So good.
But he feels the absence of her in his heart.
And also we have kind of another element of that, which is the whole taking his heart out. It means anyone who finds his heart has sovereignty over him, like rules over him, is his master. You know, Becca gets the heart and is his master. If Jack got the heart, he'd be his master. And the whole point of this is he wanted sovereignty over himself. He wanted nobody to have control over him, but now anybody can have control over him. Yeah. And connected with that is that whole, I'm going to show you how much of a heart I don't have. You really get the impression, like watching all the stuff with the Dutchman, that, and I love this, that he's just being cruel for the sake of cruelty. Yeah. Right? You know, you have that when he's asking the people if they want to join. One says, you're cruel. And he says, which will come up later, life is cruel. Why should the afterlife be different?
Yeah. Or that making bootstrap quip will for funsies.
Yes. Just because cruelty.
Because either he's going to make him whip his own son, or he's going to make him stand back and watch while somebody cleaves flesh from bone on every swing. Either way. It's funny.
And this is just like the Dutchman is so horrible. And he's making it doesn't need to be this horrible. You know, we see that when Will takes over. You have the kind of all the sea stuff falling off them. They're being human again. And you get this impression of like, oh, it's going to be different now.
The Dutchman could be a cool and groovy place.
Yes. We all treat each other fair. Could be a cool and groovy. The Flying Dutchman. Now cool and groovy. And yeah, I love you had the observation, like, this is basically like hell. That this is just everybody hates each other and everybody just tries to get enough power to push the other guy around. And the only sort of pleasure is the pleasure of like bullying and cruelty. And once again, he's kind of like putting on a facade here to show how mean he is and how little he cares and how he doesn't have a heart.
Could someone with a heart do all this?
Could say, if I had a heart, could I be so mean to my crew? And this also has this, he has no loyalty, he has no fellowship with the crew, he wants relationships he can control. Like, the only relationship is this, I can punish you, I can hurt you, I can be sadistic to you if you don't make me happy, if you don't do what I say. So there's a bit where like they take the heart on the island, it's the leading to the cool three-way like fight wheel scene, and he's sending the crew and he's saying, I can't go on the island because I can't touch land, so go get the heart and bring it back. And then one of the crew's like, you can trust us, Captain. And he's like, I can trust you to know what you'll get if you don't. Like, he can't, like, call in any kind of loyalty or fellowship.
Yeah. As opposed to, like, you know, even with Barbossa, like, it's not like we see him being chummy with the crew. And, you know, he does, like, they try to mutiny at the one point, and he does clearly, like, he does rule through fear because he's a pirate. Yeah. But you don't get the sense that they all hate each other the way you do on the Dutchman.
And he's not being cruel for the sake of cruelty. Yeah. Like, you're always, whenever Barbossa's cruel to his crew, there's, like, a purpose. He's pushing back. You know, they challenged him, he's pushing back. Or he's trying to accomplish something or get them to do something. But it's never just for lulz. Yeah. And I think this is part of the story where it is actually paralleling Jack Sparrow and his whole arc of the series.
Who was another candidate for Darklord. We'll get to him.
Basically, that whole, the problem of being totally independent, not having any attachments or anyone holding you down or any like connection, is then you don't have those things. You're alone. Yeah. And then we have element of tragedy and relatability, and that is, to quote Rachel earlier, unrequited love sucks. Yeah. And like, this isn't full on unrequited, but like having a broken heart that she did betray him. She did, you know, stand him up. Yeah. Right? Like, and this was their one chance in a decade to kind of be together. And she stood him up.
And if you've never had a breakup that makes you want to be too emo to go to work and just sit in your room and play your song with your face, I am so jealous of you.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, you know, you've had it pretty good. You've had it pretty good. And there's kind of the levels of that sympathy. Because once again, even if, lucky you haven't had your heart broken, I feel like everyone can imagine having their heart broken. Yeah. And we can imagine, number one, the desire to cut out our heart. The desire to say, I would rather be numb and feel no joy and no happiness if I could take this pain out of me, if I could stop feeling this pain. Also, we understand the lashing out, right? Yes. Like, even if you haven't, I hope you can empathize and imagine, I'm gonna make my breakup literally everyone's problem. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna, like, mess up the world and that'll show her. I am gonna everyone's gonna suffer because my heart got broken.
Yeah.
So finally, we have this domain reflecting the Darklord's personality or curse. It's the ocean.
Yeah.
I am the sea. Like there you go. We have all of them have the pirate thematic connections. Like all of our potential Darklords, pretty much, you could bring in some of this connection idea of pirates. This is a domain of piracy. That's sort of the major aesthetic of the domain, the main theme of the domain. We also here have like the curse, and we'll touch on this a little more, but that's a big element in this series, in this franchise, and that he has this curse, but that there's a sense that like the heart, Davy Jones and the heart is kind of the curse. It's kind of the ultimate curse. And the heart is kind of the ultimate MacGuffin, because it's this sort of the ultimate force of the sea, the ultimate power of the sea. And one other theme we have is that kind of freedom versus control. And, all the movies, there's the pirates, and then there's sort of the cops, the ocean cops, who kind of represent control and order and society and stability. And then the pirates who represent kind of freedom and anarchy and self-determination. And Davy Jones is kind of here an anti-pirate.
He's kind of the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's like a real pirate.
Yeah.
Like he's not a fun-loving swashbuckler.
He's not a fun animatronic with a bottle of rum.
Yeah, he is a terrible person who wants anarchy with him in control.
Yes. Like who rules through sadism, who rules through cruelty, who binds people, who follows these very legalistic contracts.
I could even explain the whole, Brethren Court, parlay, code, legalistic pirate nonsense.
Yes. That there's sort of that themes, and this is the kind of inner cutting of the pirates and the order and chaos and pirates and control, and this is sort of trying to reach that kind of balance between chaos and order. But Davy Jones is just sort of anarchy with him in control.
Yeah. So he's kind of the worst of both worlds. You have like Jack Sparrow and Beckett as the two different sides of him. That one is the very cold, heartless, legalistic, controlling, and the other one being the footloose, fancy-free, I've got no strings on me.
Right, yeah. No heart, basically.
No heart, yeah. Both heartless in their own way.
Yeah. So, in terms of statting out Davy Jones, using him as a domain lord, normally we like to use the base stats from the core monster manual, but that's not going to work in this, because we kind of mentioned there's a lack of some social stuff, and there is just such a perfect base stat block to use. The Drowned Master from Saltmarsh, from Ghost of Saltmarsh. This is literally a drowned, rotting pirate captain with tentacles. Like, he already has a default, tentacle attack.
Yeah.
And a control, psychic connection to his drowned, rotting, undead pirate crew. So
part of the ship. Part of the crew.
In terms of special powers as a Darklord, we have a couple options here. He has a lot. There's a lot here.
Yeah. This is one where we're giving him a ton of extra powers, because Davy Jones is a monster in every possible sense of the word.
And the sort of tricky thing here is to kind of not just be like, and this, and not just list a dozen powers. So we try to put these in a kind of a way they would flow coherently and be trackable.
Yeah, a lot of it links to the black spot.
yes. That's in the Disney Sorcerer's Arena board game. That's like a lot of his stuff is black spot. Right?
Cool.
He can basically summon minions, and he can curse people and then control them. And, So we start with the idea that he's this, as we mentioned, a legalistic monster. So we have this ability that he can make contracts with people. He can make deals with people. And this is like some of our other Darklords with contract powers. He is as bound by them, like Hades, like Dr. Vasilier. He is as bound by the specific details, by the wording of the contract as they are. Yeah. Like, they have to follow him, he has to follow them. Yeah. We have the scene with the dice game in Dead Man's Chest, and the whole, you totally get, if Will had won, he would have had to give him the key. Yeah. He has no choice. He made a deal to play for this key. If he had lost, he would have to take it. And the same thing with, if Will had lost, he would have owed Davy Jones his immortal soul. Yeah. They didn't sign any paperwork or anything, but it just, no, he said, I am betting, staking my soul, so he'd have to.
There's a deleted scene where they play another round before that one, where Will successfully gambles for his father's freedom. So, his father jumping in and, saying that he's offering up his soul is even more of a thing because he just won his freedom. And Will wins, and Davy Jones is like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right, yeah. And even, Will can leave. Like, Will can just get in a boat and row away because he's bought his freedom, because Davy Jones doesn't have his soul. And he said, you are welcome to leave next time we make port.
Yeah.
One of those contracts, a very important key of this, is the black spot. That if someone makes a contract to serve him, like Jack does, then when that time is up, whatever it is, even that like legalistic, like, but did you not call yourself Captain
that was
Jack
so
Sparrow?
great! That was so great.
And then you were a bad captain. Then they get he manifests the black spot, and this is kind of his mystical connection, his sort of mystical stamp on them.
Sort of his Eye of Haslick, if you will.
Yes, this binds them to the Flying Dutchman. This lets him track them. This lets him do the Kraken or the Locker. He can unleash the Kraken for stat block use, Kraken, and he can summon it, and when it's unleashed, it targets the black spot. This lets him teleport him and his crew into the proximity of anyone with the black spot. So we have that scene where they're watching with the spyglass when they've sent Will to him to settle his debts, and Davy Jones and the crew just appear on the Black Pearl. And I don't think we ever see him like teleport in any other context except to Jack.
Yeah.
Because he has the black spot. The ship is another superpower, basically. It's super powerful. It has Gatling gun cannons somehow. And
because it's
awesome. It is super fast. It can go underwater. And the crew is absolutely loyal by fear. He cannot be killed unless you stab his heart. He could be restrained, he could be buried, he could be dropped in the ocean, you could do a bunch of stuff to him, but he does not get to 0 hit points unless you stab his heart.
In which case you become Captain of the Dutchman, so have fun with that.
Speaking of the heart, that he is immune to any enchantment or mind-affecting ability, unless his heart was within 100 feet, because we mentioned that amazing scene.
Yeah.
Where he's, doing his 10 o'clock, show Callisto, I don't care that she dumped me, by playing their song, and the tear comes in his face, and he picks it up with a face tentacle and is like, what the heck is happening?
I did not authorize
it. And it's because they brought the heart on board. That's so good. I love
so
that part.
Good. It's so good. And so we wanted that to kind of be, because if we could have made it specifically spells that affect emotions, we would have. But that was getting too granular.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have a heart, he doesn't have emotions, you can't cast Cause Fear on Davy Jones.
He can't cast Charm Person.
You certainly can't cast Friends.
Also, as mentioned, as part of his connection to the ship, he can only go on land once every 10 years, so we have to send the crew. This is a great, he is such a beast, but, in 2, there is that kind of go-to move of, if we just go on land, we don't have to actually fight Davy Jones himself.
Yeah.
We have to fight his dumb minions. And that's a lot more of an appetizing prospect, as we fight his dumb minions.
Yeah. It's nice if you've got a Darklord who are going on this long about their special powers.
Yeah.
There's a loophole to escape them.
And then finally, the power that all Darklords have, the plot device power, except for a couple of our examples, with Prince John.
And kind of Kevin McAllister.
Right, and kind of Kevin McAllister, and a couple others we've done. And that is closing the borders. No exception here. He can just close the borders. And he just makes this, it's the same as Treasure Island. He just makes the sea impassable. He makes it so stormy. We're imagining, this is jumping ahead a little bit, we're imagining it's an archipelago. There's island, but it's mostly ocean. And he just makes it surrounded by this massive storm that no one can get through.
We know we're repeating ourselves a little bit with an ocean with an archipelago in it and closing the borders with a storm, but it's pirates.
What else are we going to do?
What else are we going to do? We can't have it be he is the pirate Darklord of North Dakota.
Yeah, that would be something. So then the last thing, talking about Davy Jones, as much as we'd love to just sit here and talk about nothing but Davy Jones, because he's so awesome.
So great. He's so great.
Is the role-playing trait Ideal Bond and Flaw. And we're going to take this domain, we're going to write it up, put it on DM's Guild for free in the style of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and in that style, we have to give these role-playing trait Ideal Bond and Flaw as quotes. And they give them as quotes to all the Darklords in Van Richten's Guide, but of course we want to use actual quotes from the movie. So I've assembled some quotes that I think would be good examples of those things, and we will see which one we want to use to kind of establish his personality, establish how you would role-playing, and I'm not going to do an impression for each of them.
It's tempting though it may be.
Except for this one. Do you fear? Every time I watch it, I forgot what a voice Bill Nighy
Yes.
does. The just awesome Squidman voice. Weird accent that he's doing. It's great. So, do you fear death? Do you fear that dark abyss? All your deeds laid bare. All your sins punished.
Oh, so good.
Gotta have this one. Life is cruel. Why should the afterlife be any different?
It sounds like an ideal, but we'll see. Because there are other things that are going to sound like an ideal, too.
Let no joyful voice be heard. Let no man look up at the sky with hope, and let this day be cursed by we who ready to wake the Kraken. That is a good one. That can be a good. That can be the good Kraken power. I am the sea.
Oh, why are all of these the ideal?
Really good.
Oh, these are so good.
And this is from that deleted scene Rachel mentioned. Mm-hmm. I only bet what's nearest to a man's heart. Else there's no way to tell if he's bluffing. When a man is willing to risk or not to risk, that's a measure of his soul.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, isn't that good?
That's super
movies
cool.
have really good writing.
They do.
Especially the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Ah, love, a dreadful bond, and yet so easily severed. That's a good one. Oh, these are really good.
All of these are amazing.
The Dutchman sails as his captain commands. That's got to be the Bond.
I don't know, because I feel like Bond has to be to Calypso.
Yeah, you're right. But that's got to be something. The Dutchman sails.
Maybe it's maybe it could be one of his powers.
Yeah. Not a person, a heathen god, one who delights in cursing men with their wildest dreams and revealing them to be hollow and naught but ash. The world is well rid of her.
See, to me that sounds like
Yes,
Bond.
that's extremely Bond. So yeah, no,
Although it looks like your last one is also Calypso related. So.
Yeah. The First Brethren Court promised to imprison her forever. That was our agreement. I showed them how to bind her. She could not be trusted. She gave me no choice. We must act before she is released. And then, he says, she loved you and you betrayed her. She pretended to love me. She betrayed me.
Oh, maybe that's the bond.
Oh, because, his bond is to his... Gosh, this is really hard because, okay.
His bond is to Calypso and how much it's not to Calypso.
Yes, as to how much I don't care about her. Maybe the I love a dreadful bond and yet so easily severed, because that's sort of the... Yeah, that's sort of the, love is a dreadful bond. Love is terrible, but it's so easily severed. I'm once again pretending that... Pretending I don't care. Pretending it was as easy as cutting out my heart. Meant I don't have this love anymore.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, cool.
I think, do you feel death? Do you fear that dreadful abyss? That's a good trait.
That is a very good trait,
that's his introduction.
No,
such
absolutely.
A good introduction. That's who this guy is.
Yes. So then we have the ideal and the flaw. Flaw, there isn't a real quote that says my flaw is that I'm pretending I don't miss my girlfriend.
I feel like that last one is a lot of...
Yeah.
She could not be trusted. She gave me no choice. What's that? Before she's released, she pretended to love me. She betrayed me.
Do you want the whole quote, or you just want the she pretended to love me, she betrayed me?
I think she gave me no choice. She pretended to love me, she betrayed me.
Yeah. I love it. So then, there's so many of these could be the ideal. So many of these.
I feel so many of them could, but I think the best is Life is Cruel.
No, because that even is this is the value, this is the principle that is guiding his actions. This is the value that is sort of him saying, this is why I am the way I am. This is why I act the way I act. Life is cruel, so I'm going to be cruel.
Yeah.
I'm going to make the afterlife be cruel because I believe life is cruel. Mm-hmm. And so once again, I'm sort of making my drama everyone's problem.
Yeah. This is his guiding principle, and this is how he convinces himself. Well, he's the bad guy, but so is everybody.
Yeah, you know what? But so is everyone. So we have our role-playing trait ideal bond and flaw, a difficult pick from a very well-written character in a pretty well-written series.
It's like with Wanda. It's like we came to these pretty quickly, given that it was a murderer's row of quotes.
You had to be like, no, just focus. So, he, as we mentioned, has this connection to this archipelago that we are imagining, that we are calling Davy Jones' Locker. And we'll talk more about Davy Jones' Locker and the islands there within in a section we like to call
The Land. The Land. As mentioned, Davy Jones' locker reminded me of Flint's archipelago in many ways, a vast sea dotted with islands and plagued by pirates. Unlike Flint's archipelago, however, the local government is not as greedy for the commoners' gold as the pirates themselves. Some, such as the kindly Governor Swan of Port Royal, evinced a genuine desire to help and protect their people. Others, such as Lord Cutler Becket of the East India Trading Company, whom I never had the misfortune to personally meet, although one of his agents had crewed that ill-fated merchantman, hunger for a greater prize than mere bribes and blackmail. Mary Reed informed me that Becket desired a mercantile empire to rival the Boritsi Trading Company. While pirates posed the most obvious threat to these ambitions and were aggressively targeted by the company's fleet, the common people could find themselves in Becket's sights if he believed they could help or hinder his plans. That agent of the company had made a few veiled remarks about the sort of fate a soft man like Swan could expect under Becket's regime. Curiously, while the pirates' greed has not thoroughly infected the local government, some level of the government's ordered nature seems to have affected the pirates. The crew spoke of the Brethren Court, a sort of nautical thieves guild, with Davy Jones himself as one of its founding members. The court as a whole established a code for pirates to follow, and certain pirate lords commanded fleets that almost functioned as their own personal armadas. Bonnie's Red Jolly Roger identified her as answering to a pirate lord named Mistress Ching. In exchange for protection, Bonnie owed Ching a percentage of her plunder and agreed to certain rules of conduct pertaining to female hostages. This protection clearly did not include Ching helping her captains renege on bargains with vengeful sea gods. Similarly, I do not know whether this honor amongst thieves did not extend to sharing information about a treasure as powerful as the heart, or whether the pirates we met truly had no idea where it might be found. Either way, none were particularly forthcoming. A few, however, pointed us toward other supposed pieces of magical treasure. A trident with the power to break curses, a compass that would lead the bearer to her heart's desire, a map to the afterlife, as well as a swamp witch who might help her for a hefty price. I was surprised by the sheer number of magical items that were supposedly strewn about the locker, and wondered at first whether it merely reflected a pirate's fascination with plunder. Upon further examination, I believe that it has something to do with the heart of Davy Jones. After all, anyone who finds his heart will have all of his power at their disposal, as well as freedom from any debts they might owe him. A prize of such cosmic significance may well draw other lesser treasures toward it, like remoras to a shark.
So in this section, The Land, we go over the setting, and this one, our basic structure, we're taking a lot from our Treasure Planet / Treasure Island. Sorry to repeat ourselves.
There are certain things you need for piracy, and they continue to be the things you need for piracy, regardless of who your Darklord is.
And honestly, that they both trying to go for a very piratey setting vibe, so you're going to have a lot of overlap in the setup, and also Treasure Island is a huge influence on the Pirates of the Caribbean. You can see a lot of Long John Silver DNA in Jack. Yeah, if you haven't since you were 8, or if you just know the Treasure Planet version, that's a much nicer version of Long John Silver in the original story. Read it or watch one of the older movies, and you're like, oh yeah, this is Jack Sparrow's like that guy, but a weird Johnny Depp eyeliner. Yeah, just mercurial, chaotic, playing every side possible, and attempt to get out on top. But just super sketchy and amoral, but super charming, and sort of wins over everyone. Manipulative, either manipulates or wins over everyone. A lot of gosh, I can't help liking this. This guy's awful, but I can't help liking him. So yeah, a lot of overlap there. So it's that same basic setup we did with Treasure Island / Treasure Planet of it's an archipelago. So you have all the sailing and lots of islands, mysterious or otherwise, and that has a lot of trade, it's a major source of trade routes, and a lot of these islands do have valuable natural resources, and that gives you a lot of heavy piracy.
Yeah. This is the setup you need for a pirate's domain, whether it's a Pirates of the Caribbean domain or there are pirates in it domain.
Yeah. You need lots of ocean, and especially sort of a golden age, trying to evoke kind of golden age Caribbean piracy. You need a Caribbean.
Yeah.
And you need pirates, which means you need trade. You need things for them to rob, so you need merchant ships, you need trade to get a Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes. And one of the things we talked about with Treasure Planet is that you also need kind of a weak central government in order for piracy to flourish. And with Treasure Planet, it was specifically the idea that the central government was very corrupt. Whereas with Pirates of the Caribbean, we get them know it's the colonial government, so it's not that they're corrupt, it's that they're kind of spread thin.
Yes.
They're farther away from where their home base is. And, since it's in Ravenloft, it's not like, they can just be reaching out to, like, Damon Lu, where they came from or whatever. It's kind of like what we talked about with Hunchback of Notre Dame, where, like, they have the place that they know that they came from, and they're sure they're going to hear back from them any day now, but they haven't yet.
The communications are tricky in the distant Miss CC. So we know there is a king, because we have several times, especially with the East India Company stuff in 2 and 3, references to the king and the papers from the king and warrants signed by the king. So, like I was saying, much like with Hunchback, there's, like, out there somewhere they think there's this king. And that's, like, then they're part of this empire. They're like one branch of this empire. They're just currently not in touch with the rest of the empire.
So you've got the Royal Navy and the East India Trading Company, and they are, both going around trying to enforce things against pirates, but they're spread kind of thin.
Yeah.
And once again, we, with Treasure Planet, we wanted it to be very much this theme of corruption, this theme of you can't trust anyone, this theme of everyone's taking bribes. We don't see that in Pirates of the Caribbean. Norrington is true blue.
Right.
And, Beckett's a horrible person, but he's a horrible person who's not going to get bribed by pirates.
Yeah. The corruption we see in the East India Company in the Pirates franchise is a different, like, kind of corruption. And it's a wanting power and sort of breaking all the rules and breaking all the principles to, like, get that power and to get that wealth. But it's for his own sake. It's not like he's taking bribes from the pirates. They're working hand in glove with smugglers. No, it's he wants to wipe out all of the pirates and smugglers.
Yeah.
One big difference with this and the sort of Treasure Planet, Treasure Island, Flint's Archipelago setting, this is Davy Jones's archipelago, is the undead. Because that's this huge theme we have starting with movie 1. We have repeated again and again and again. The concept of the undead. We're going to touch more on this later when we talk about running a pirate-style adventure, but that's from, minute 15 of the first movie. That's a huge thing. So that would be a big thing. This would be, you could always have undead pirates, but this is a setting where that's a very common thing. To run into ghosts, to run into skeletons, to run into zombies, to run into wights, to run into, like, wraiths, to run into whatever. Just to run into a lot of undead.
Yeah.
And that even makes sense in kind of the metaphysics of this setting.
Yes.
I think this was you, so.
Yeah, because we have the whole that Davy Jones isn't doing his ding-dang job because he's too emo to go to work. He's playing the organ with his face. And his job is to ferry the souls of those who died at sea to the next world. So anyone who dies at sea is just kind of hanging out at sea. So you could have, like, a big specific kind of curse thing like is going on with the Black Pearl, or you could just have ghost ships.
There's just a lot of ghost ships around.
Shipping around, because when they went down with all hands, they're still wandering around.
Just floating in the water, waiting on the edge there. So the sort of passage from death to life is all wonky. And so that's how you get undead. You're gonna get a lot of undead.
Yeah.
If something's kind of messing up and blocking up the sort of pearly gates for those who die at sea.
Yeah.
And it's even going to be a lot of, like, pirates and nautical dead, because it's, like, specifically hitting. You can use this to justify any undead, just the whole thing's kerfluvi, but it's specifically especially hitting people that die at sea.
Yeah, so you can have ghost powers just all up and down the theater. And of course, in order to make the adventure work, there is going to be a specific thing that you can do to put them to rest that doesn't necessarily involve tangling with Davy Jones, because, he's got plot armor. But that gives you so many adventure hooks for trying to put all these ghost ships to rest.
Like, just look through all the undead monsters in the monster manual and just be like, how do I make this piratey? Or how do I make this nautical? Or how do I, what kind of revenant? I want to do a revenant. Like, what's the revenant going to be?
Or look at all the various ocean monsters and be like, how do I make these ghost pirates?
Right. So, then, in terms of specific places, now, once again, we're not going to, go through every single random, island, magical or otherwise.
No, we're not going to talk about the Cannibal Island at the beginning of Dead Man's Chest.
Yeah, or, Isla de Morte. Good lord. Yeah. Isla de Morte or anything. This is an infinite island generator. This is just whatever islands, whatever cursed, whatever regular, whatever, native-filled islands you want to have. I think we mentioned Ghost of Saltmarsh already, but once again, it's a fantastic resource. they have just a random island generator.
Nice.
So yeah, it's just a bunch of charts you roll on to generate, like, it's a friendly island, it's a hostile island, it's a cursed island, it's a, like, mystical island, it's a sanctuary, it's a magical island, and then, like, here's a chart of different types of magical islands. Roll on one of them. Or like, oh, it's an island, it's a mystery island. Oh, well, here's a chart of mysteries, of, like, secrets for the island to have. So that is going to be absolutely your best friend here, is whenever you want, if your PCs have a ship and they're just bopping around Davy Jones' locker, you can just roll up whatever random islands. But some specific places that we think are going to be useful for, like, just as anchor points to any campaign in this setting. And we have got first two that are sort of in opposition to each other. We touched on something like this within our Hunchback episode with the Palace of Justice and the Court of Miracles. You should listen to it. It's great. It's really long. I know it's really great.
It's 2 parts, yeah.
But it's Port Royale and Tortuga. And Port Royale, that's the center of government. I don't know if it's like the regional capital, but basically.
Just you can treat it that way.
The only place we ever see where there's, like, this significant government and significant sort of law and order and people being civilized and going, oh, very improper.
Wearing their powdered wigs.
Yeah, wearing their powdered wigs and having balls. And
of course, it's in strong opposition to the uncorseted women on the seas.
Ooh, I say. So this could be your fun, like, ooh, I say, kind of scenes if you want to do that with your PCs.
So Seldon is not wearing a corset.
Yes. And it's also kind of the naval HQ. Like, that's where we have, and that's the sort of base of operations. So where we have the Dauntless, where we have the Interceptor. Like, this is like the naval HQ. So that's important, This is sort of necessary if they're just pirating around. You need some non-pirate place.
Yeah.
You need some place to be kind of the opposite that the pirates are sort of antithesis to. And this is the antithesis to something like Tortuga, which of course is Pirate Town.
Yes.
That's written here. Tortuga - Pirate Town.
Yes.
Like, if Port Royale is the center of government, the center of civilization, the center of law and order and control, this is the center of anarchy, of
piracy,
chaos, of violence, and also very dangerous. Like, so this is that sort of, it's super fun, it's super crazy, everybody can drink rum and smash bottles over heads and shoot pistols and cackle. And
if you're not careful, then you wake up the next morning in a bathtub full of ice with your kidneys missing.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, like, Port Royale is very much the, like, goofy Pirates of the Caribbean version of a pirate town, but this is Ravenloft, so we can get the darker hedge. Probably more historically accurate.
Yeah.
You get in the wrong, you pump the wrong person in the alley, you get in the wrong card game with someone, and you're gonna end up with your throat cut and dumped in the ocean. The ocean takes care of a lot of there's a lot of, like, well-fed sharks around Port Royale. And then, kind of weirdly in the middle of this, we're going to have Shipwreck Cove. And this is, of course, from 3, the headquarters of the Brethren Court. And the Brethren Court's interesting to play in this sort of order-chaos opposition. Because weirdly,
pirates have a lot of rules.
a lot of rules, a lot of, like, bureaucratic procedure, very strictly followed bureaucratic procedure. So
Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
Take notes at a criminal fracking conspiracy.
Yeah. There's somebody there, like, taking the minutes. They have to open their big piratical meetings with a reading of the minutes from their last piratical meeting, and then old business, and then new business, and
one Hester Ravel is a pirate king.
And it's this idea of trying to find that kind of middle ground between, like, sort of the absolute control and order of the Port Royale and the Empire and the Navy versus the absolute anarchy of something like Tortuga. So, Tortuga, we don't have any kind of, like, mayor or anything. Whereas this is like, no, these are pirates, but they're pirates that have agreed to follow a set of rules.
I was like, Tortuga is much more of it's more of a guideline.
Yes.
Whereas Shipwreck Cove, they're treating them like they're actual rules.
And everyone's like, oh, we don't, none of us want to do this, but I guess we have to.
It's the rules.
It's in the rule book.
Dang, we have to make Elizabeth Pirate Queen, even though she's not a pirate.
The pirate constitution says that's how the pirate electoral college works. So we're just, the hands are tied. And that's interesting because then you could have, like, in Pirates 3, it's sort of all pirates. Pirate is like a nation you belong to. It's like your ethnicity and all pirates are. But we're imagining it's much more like you have this one really big faction of the Brethren Court.
Yeah.
And these are pirates that are agreeing to follow these rules.
They are kind of the Thieves Guild.
Yeah, the Thieves Guild, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what would D&D setting be without a Thieves Guild? Because it gives you, like, you get to do thievy stuff and have your rogue be doing thieving stuff, but you also get all that, like, there's politics, there's bureaucracy, there's potential enemies, there's structure to just sort of generate stories.
And then you can have that and have your PCs be kind of going through that and, you know, like navigating all these politics within the Brethren Court. And then you could have, like, a Blackbeard type who's coming in and going, no.
Yeah.
No.
I think in 4 they had a line about he was like the great captain that refused to join the Brethren Court, and
that would make sense, yeah.
And just exactly. They're like some ones are sort of the bottom of the barrel, and some are just like too fierce and powerful. So once again, you have like your thieves guild, and then like your independent operatives, and that's a great source of plot, as has happened in many a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And then the final sort of general location we can have is Teodomashak.
Yeah.
They just refer to it as going upriver in Pirates too. Like when you take a trip upriver, and they do go up the river. So, you know, you could put this in a number of places. If you've been listening, I love a sort of House of Lament style, like, place that sort of exists in multiple domains, like, simultaneously. I really dig that. So it could even be, like, you pick any river, and if you just, like, do the right rituals...
Oh, I love that.
You end up at Teodomashak.
And that makes perfect sense if you're being Callista.
Exactly,
you go upriver, you always end up with her. Oh, I love that.
And this is just great as she's a freelance magic lady. Like, once again, you can never go wrong with a freelance magic lady.
Yeah.
And you can go there, and she will trade with you, and she will do divination, and she'll be, like, weird and spooky, and she'll give you ominous fortunes, and give you protective charms, and tell you how to get places, and this is, like, as in the second and third movie, this is a fantastic plot generator and, like, PC resource.
Plot generator and, like, advice hander and quest giver, and, I'm
imagining they do this whole, like, everything with the island in movie 2, and they're sort of all looking at each other like, okay, we escaped. What are we doing again? Like, I don't really remember any of the clues to what we're supposed to do next, so let's just go to the magic lady we've been told about.
Yes.
Like, make a history roll. You remember there's a magic lady that you know, and she could probably guide you on your quest. Get back on the dang quest line. Those act as these sort of, like, anchor points. Those are kind of, like, the fixed points on the map. And that's, like, basically what you need for your fixed points on the map. And then that's your framework. And within that framework, as we said, you have 1 million islands, 1 million trade ships, 1 million secret pirate coves, 1 million haunted... Aztec treasure chest caves, and just, like, whatever you want in this massive archipelago.
Yeah. So that's the set stuff we have, but, if they ever were to make a Pirate 6, they'd say, here's this random island that has plot stuff on it. So, as a DM, here's this random island that has plot stuff on it. Go nuts. Have fun.
So, but what do? You have those fixed locations. You have the 1 million potential random islands. What do you do with having your PCs go there and interact there? Rachel, what do you do with it?
Dread possibilities. Soon after we left Tortuga, a place that seemed for all the world like someone had transformed a mangy rabid mutt in heat into a port city, Anne Bonny's luck ran out. We were within sight of the island where we would supposedly find the mercurial bearer of the enchanted compass, with Bonny threatening to keelhaul me if I could not magically persuade him to help us, when the Dutchman emerged from the waves. I do not mean that she appeared over the horizon. She burst from the sea like a breaching whale, a barnacled horror out of driftwood and sun-bleached bone. Her crew were even more monstrous than I had imagined, each of them seemingly caught midway through some torturous metamorphosis into a sea creature. Mary Reed, panicking, shouted that there was some distance between us and the Dutchman, and we might still be able to escape. An optimistic notion, as we were close enough to count the fangs in her hideously carved bow. Before the sentence had even left her mouth, Davy Jones himself materialized on the deck, mere inches from Anne Bonny, and informed her that he was calling in her debt. Doubtless, Jones was accustomed to seeing his debtors pleading for mercy. Bonny did no such thing, swinging her cutlass toward him with a snarl. Jones caught it in his massive crab claw, chuckling. Bonnie turned toward us, clearly hoping that we would leap to her defense. Her crew was too terrified of Jones, however, and I had no interest in protecting the woman who had effectively kidnapped me. Reed attempted to intervene, but as she had been kind to me, and I had no desire to see Jones kill her, I cast Hypnotic Pattern to halt her in her tracks. Rage, horror, and despair filled Bonnie's eyes as she realized no aid was forthcoming. As she returned her gaze to Jones's face, they both vanished from the deck, and the Dutchman plunged beneath the waves. Certain my life would be forfeit the moment Reed broke out of her trance, I leapt overboard and made for the nearby shore.
I want adventure in the great wide somewhere.
I want it more than I can tell.
So, Rachel, why would they come to this pirate place other than for all the reasons people would go to the Caribbean in real life?
Because it is chock-a-block with magical MacGuffins.
Yes, it is. That's there's one thing we can say about the setting of these movies. It's that you can't swing a yardarm without hitting a magical MacGuffin.
That is the major export of Davy Jones's Locker, is vaguely nautical, vaguely spooky MacGuffin.
Cursed item-based economy.
Yeah. So it might be that you actually want like a specific magical MacGuffin because that powers like every single Pirates movie.
Yeah.
And so if you want to have your PCs going off on that exact same thing, that they can. Otherwise, you know, we talked about Treasure Planet, there's treasure. Like, they're pirates. They're a treasure. They might just come here because they want swag, and there is swag to be had. But specific magical MacGuffins, that's so much better. So they can go for that. There's also... What am I going to say, honey? What am I going to say?
You're going to say on count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Trade caravans! Fireworks.
Or East India Trading Company.
Yes, caravans. Yeah, that like... What is a boat but a trade caravan on the water?
Trade is in their name.
Yes.
And there are all these pirates who hate them.
Yes.
They're gonna want protection.
Yes, so easiest thing in the world, wherever they are, there's a port, they get hired by someone shipping something into this region. Boom, you're in the story.
Oh man, I just had like an entire like pirate story with all its elements just drop into my head. Okay, so you're hired to protect the trade caravan, right? For the East India Trading Company.
Indeed.
And the thing that they're specifically transporting is whatever kind of magical MacGuffin. But then you find out the horrible people that the East India Trading Company are. You are told this by some shady pirates who want to like get you to work for them on the inside and take this MacGuffin. But the pirates have their own agenda because it's a pirates movie. You've got to have all the different factions with their own agendas. And then maybe there's even another faction of pirates that's coming and trying to court you. Just, bam. There you go.
Bam. There's a whole campaign.
Yes, because as we will talk about when we get to parting thoughts and the kinds of campaigns to run here, you need your magical MacGuffin and you need your backstabbing factions.
Yes, you do. It's the nice thing here, I think we mentioned this earlier, you can do this as a not just a game about pirates in the Caribbean, but it's very easy to do a story that evokes the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
The film franchise. Like, because there's been so many of these movies, and because even those of us that might love all of them, that they're a little formulaic, but that means there's a very strong set of beats to hit. So, like, magical MacGuffin, curses, betrayals, all those things you mentioned.
You say those of us who might love all of them like we watched the fifth one.
I haven't seen it. I might. Who might, honey? I might love all of them if I watched the fifth one. I didn't just say who do love all of them.
Love you.
The great thing with this is our like go-to plot hook. This gets you anywhere because it's literally you're going to a place and you're just, doesn't matter what you're accompanying, you're just going to this place and now you're hooked into the story. But this one, you can even use this default sort of trade caravans on the water plot hook to engage with the domain lord. Because we have, like in, Pirates 3, you could have some things making Davy Jones unleash the Kraken and it's attacking ships. That's kind of why you are brought in. That's why these heavily armed transients are hired, because like something is happening that's destroying these merchant ships.
Yeah, and it could even be that you're being hired from another domain because this is happening. So Ivana hires you because the Boritsi Trading Company, whenever they're doing shipments at sea, suddenly a Kraken comes and destroys their ships because Beckett doesn't want the competition.
Yes. So wherever you you are, if there's a port and there's an economy, Darkon, Borka, like you mentioned, like any of these places, you can get hired to track down these destroyed ships, figure out what's going on, and that it brings you into immediate sort of the orbit and into immediate conflict of our Darklord, of Davy Jones.
Mm-hmm. Borka is landlocked, but presumably they have some deals with some of the...
There could be Boritsi Trading Company
ships. They have outposts in Nova
right, exactly.
I had to make sure that I love you too.
Also, aren't there rivers?
Yes.
So and this is the great thing with like the whole Mist Island. You could do a like Avalon World Tour Gargoyles thing with like they get on the river and sail into the mist and they come out in the ocean. Like any domain could do that if you're doing the Mist Islands in the 5e version. But
then it's just going to go on forever and never end. And then another possibility, we mentioned MacGuffins, and the default idea we had was kind of that you're going into Davy Jones's locker to get the MacGuffin, but it might be that there's a MacGuffin that somebody within Davy Jones's locker wants that's ended up in another domain. So you could have something very much like the beginning of Curse of the Black Pearl, where one of the pieces of gold has ended up in, like, Mordantshire or something. And so you're hanging out in Mordantshire, and the governor's daughter, one of the Weathermay Foxgroves, falls into the water, and then suddenly the Black Pearl appears and is raiding Mordantshire and kidnapping people.
Because that's the great thing, is we've got, like, Davy Jones and the Flying Dutchman are locked into the domain, but there's so many other potential piratey things. You could do the Black Pearl, you could do the Queen Anne's Revenge from 4, you could do Salazar's ship, the SS Salazar, from 5. Like, you can have a lot of that pirate's flavor can be based on like a haunted ship, and that can go out of the domain, that can go anywhere. That could sail through the mist into the rivers of Borka, launch a raid on, Lechtburg, and then sail back, and suddenly it's a problem.
Yeah, or, whatever, like, cursed pirate captain you want to make up and build your entire adventure around.
Right.
They can have something that they want that's in Martira Bay, and boom.
And so this connection with trade with other domains, if it's not a specifically trade-driven thing, kind of a MacGuffin-driven thing, it could also be an NPC-driven thing. So this is a lot like Will in 2, where he's working to save Elizabeth, so you could have a whole, Beckett or somebody, or Ivana Boritsi says, like, I'll do this thing. I have this person in my dungeon, but I'll let them go if you go do this thing for me.
Yeah.
If you go find out what's raiding these ships. Or you could even have specifically an NPC connected with this setting that has some kind of deal with Davy Jones.
Yeah, you could have your own bootstrap bill.
Right. Once again, if you want to, like, immediately tie in that Darklord, that sort of core Darklord story, you can just be like, yes, a loved one of an important NPC or an important NPC had a kind of bootstrap bill, like, was it a shipwreck and was dying and made a deal with Davy Jones.
Yeah. You mentioned the possibility that Tia Dalma kind of exists in all domains. Yeah. So you could have something where you go to Tia Dalma and you're asking for help, but in exchange she wants a favor and it's something to do with Davy Jones, because boy, how does she?
Boy, yeah. She probably has a lot of stuff she wouldn't mind sending people to do to Davy Jones. So the nice thing is you've got, like, infinite potential plot hooks. You've got like a huge number of reasons. It can be an object, it can be a person, it can be just sort of economics with ships being destroyed because they're not knuckling under to whoever's got Davy Jones's heart. And all of these, you are not only getting your PCs in the domain, you are immediately, like, in that sort of conflict, in that orbit with Davy Jones. Like, you are getting a story about Davy Jones. And this is kind of, normally have a section where you say, and then when you're there, here's the kind of story you would do. We sort of already have done that.
Yeah. And we're going to get into it more when we talk about the kind of story that you can run in this setting. But yeah, just MacGuffins, betrayals, piracy, cursed captains of cursed ships.
And a lot of these plot hooks, plot ideas are that direct handling with Davy Jones. Like, normally, I'm always like, how do I not engage the Darklord? Because they do tend to, like, suck up all the oxygen in the room.
Yeah, like, I know apparently there's debate about whether you can run a Ravenloft game without engaging a Darklord, and I find that kind of ridiculous, because as I've mentioned on a couple of episodes, I've run so much Ravenloft, and have used so few Darklords. Hashtag exception, my boy Ivan. Because, yeah, that same, like, they suck up all the oxygen in the room. And there is a lot of space here for you to not engage the Dark Lord because there are 5 movies and only 2 of them have Davy Jones in them.
Yeah, exactly.
But...
Yeah, by the way, to that debate, the answer is you don't have to have the Dark Lord as an NPC, but you have to have thematic connections to the Dark Lord in the story.
Yep.
So, just glad we settled it, guys. So, but yeah, so this one, there's so many good ways to bring in Davy Jones because he is so central to the setting. And all of these stories are going to revolve around something with Davy Jones, and it's that idea of like sort of the contract and the deal. And like a lot of this is boiling down to that scene where they're playing liar's dice.
Yeah.
That like, for me, the all of these stories I'm imagining running in this setting, if I want to engage Davy Jones, involve getting him to do something. And it could be getting him to let someone go, like Will's trying to do. It could be getting him to stop attacking ships. It could be getting him to transport someone to the other side. Yeah. That's the great thing. Like, you could have something as simple and low stakes as, like, someone that matters to the PCs, or someone that matters to someone that matters to the PCs. You know, some sort of, like, Will Turner's father.
Governor Swan.
Governor Swan, yeah. Has died at sea and cannot rest unless Davy Jones agrees to do his gosh dang job.
For 5 minutes.
For one time in decades. And, like, he always has that possibility of carrying that person to the other side. So you could do this very low stakes, very personal Pirates of the Caribbean story where it's all about, like, your PCs are friends with an Elizabeth. She is given these sort of signs, hauntings, prophetic dreams that her father can't rest at peace unless they can get Davy Jones to ferry him to the other side.
You could actually, we were talking about all the ghost ships and everything, and that could be a solution to, like, if you have a ghost pirate antagonist, you know, you could try and just beat them down in a fight.
Yeah.
Or you could say, hey, what if Davy Jones actually does his gosh dang job and carries his ship to the other side, and then they can rest.
And the nice thing is, this isn't, like, setting shattering. You're not getting a new captain on the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
You're just saying, like, this one time, like, today, do your dang job. Then you can go back to moping and face organ playing. But, like, just for this ship of dead people, take them to the other side.
It's like a mouth organ, but bigger.
Yes. And you also have this great, you know, sort of Pirates 2 inspired, a little bit of Pirates 3 inspired. It could also be the MacGuffin chase for the heart.
Yeah.
That could be our, like, okay, we got to get Ivan and Boritsi off our backs, so we need to get Davy Jones to stop attacking ships, so we need to find who's controlling him with the heart. Because he doesn't care about trade ships. So that's even a big red flag right there that somebody's controlling him.
Yeah. And then, as Tom mentioned, you don't have to engage the Dark Lord that has to be thematically connected. You can have that kind of, like, contract and legalism and everything. Like, even in the worst of the Pirates movies, I assume I haven't seen 5.
Yeah, right.
But
let us know in the comments.
4 was not good. One of the things that they do really well is there are rules. Magic has rules. Like, even the Pirates, chaotic people though they are, have rules. And, you know, doing something involving playing with those rules. And again, we're going to talk about that more when we get to parting thoughts. But I wanted to make sure that I got in something about the non-Davy Jones games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of built up to that.
So those are some things you could do. Those are a lot of ways to get you into the Caribbean, other than just you're there for vacation. And those are some stories you could engage in the Caribbean. And we will even talk a little bit more, like with a little more detail about what those stories might look like. But first, we like to talk about our Dread Possibility section. And this is where we talk about kind of alternative versions of what we presented. This is, so far, has been sort of our default setting. This has been like what we put in the write-up on DM's Guild. But we have some alternatives. And we always like to do aging down, aging up. Because, our son, 13, says Curse the Black Pearl is his favorite movie. And he said that for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So like 11, absolutely, a table of 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds could really love doing a Pirates of the Caribbean game.
Yeah, he thought about going as Jack Sparrow for Halloween.
Yes.
He was like 10 or 11 years old,
And like a lot of things, just kind of lean into the movies. Like a little, you have to do a little bit more because these are a bit more like adult PG-13, whereas most of our stuff is PG animated Disney movies. But they do a good job in the movies of making pirates wacky and fun. Yeah. Especially the later ones. They're just sort of like the rock stars wanting to drink rum and not have any rules. And also, they do a generally really good job of having the violence be kind of cartoony.
Yes.
Like, there's the specter of violence, there's the threat of violence, and that's a little, like, darker edged and more adult when it's used as a threat. But when we actually see violence, it's almost always, like, action movie violence. Like very, like, PG, bloodless action movie violence.
Yeah. Like, I think the most, like, chilling violence moments are, like you said, the threat of violence. Like, the bosun whipping Will. And, you know, grinding flesh from bone, but he never did that. Or, like, when Barbossa is about to give Elizabeth Swann over to the other pirates. You know, the adults can pick up on what he's talking about.
Yeah. The most one I can think of that you would want to, like, move away from is actually just when Elizabeth's father is trying to help her escape in 2, and, like, they see the captain, and they turn around, and, like, Beckett's goon he's got him impaled.
Yeah.
Or, you know, spoiler alert, some of the deaths in 3. I won't even go into much detail.
Yeah, said Beckett goon goes down really nastily in 3.
Yeah.
And it's just, but again, you know, if you're running for kids, you probably know this.
Yeah, right. Don't have anybody have their throat cut on camera.
Yeah, or be, you know, choked to death on tentacles.
Yeah.
Like, you can imagine what a PG version of Pirates of the Caribbean looks like, and just do that. Just play up the goofy, have a little bit of spooky, and a big thing is, you know, with the moral ambiguity, like, Jack Sparrow's always going to end up having a heart of gold.
Yes. The only other kind of obvious thing I can think of is some of the more adult themes with Davy Jones's backstory with Calypso, and by adult I mean emotionally.
Yeah.
And that's not going to resonate with kids. Like, we love that stuff. Like,
that scene between Davy Jones and Calypso.
One of the franchise, like, top 10 in the franchise. Yeah. Top 10 scenes in the franchise. So good. Especially top 10 just, like, acting scenes. Not, like, crazy stunts. Yeah. It's so good, but once again, kids might get a little antsy at that part because nobody's sword fighting or quipping or jumping on things or swinging on ropes. Yeah,
and you know the kids that you're running this for, maybe they're going to feel so adult and sophisticated that they get what's going on, because there's that kind of kid too. So, you know your audience.
Yeah. But just, you may want to just, like, downplay that part of the Davy Jones backstory. It's not going to matter. He's just a jerk.
Yeah.
He's just a jerk who won't do his job.
Yeah.
You know, kids understand a jerk that won't do his job.
Yeah. I do want to jump back, because we mentioned the whole, like, kind of pirates ultimately having a heart of gold, Jack Sparrow ultimately having a heart of gold. We talked about the double crosses and everything. And I think Curse of the Black Pearl is the way to run all the double crosses and stuff with kids, where, like, the other pirates, Gibbs and them, they're about to run out on Jack, but Elizabeth is able to convince them to come around.
Yes.
Like, Jack, he's talking about selling Will out to Barbossa, but eventually he sides with Will. Like, they might make noise about betraying the PCs, but eventually they're always going to be on the PC side, especially if they make that persuasion check and feel all great about winning.
Oh, man, that would be great. Also, in terms of using Curse of the Black Pearl as a model for that whole sort of betrayal double-cross thing, I think it's a good model not just for tone, but also for comprehensibility.
Yes.
Like, you've got Will and Elizabeth are PCs in this example, and you basically just have 3 factions they're interacting with. You have Jack Sparrow's his own thing, and that's, like, the big wild card. You've got the Royal Navy, and you've got the Black Pearl. And those guys are, like, color-coded for your convenience. Right? There is not going to be any confusion. Also, they have, like, really strong, clear goals, really strong, clear, like, institutional personalities. And, like, their goals never even really change. Like, the Royal Navy, their goal, like, what they're doing doesn't change much over the course of the movie. And same with the Black Pearl.
And even really clear, why are they in this movie?
Yes.
Because I remember when we were rewatching Dead Man's Chest.
Yeah.
Like, I remembered that at the end, Norrington got Davy Jones's heart and took it to Beckett. But you didn't remember that was how it ended. Right. So you were like, why is Norrington in this movie? Like, his goals are clear, but why is he here?
Why do we need, like, another guy?
Yeah. So, Curse of the Black Pearl never feels cluttered or confusing the way some of the other movies do at times.
Right. And each of even those groups has their sort of, like, mouthpiece NPC. So you've got Norrington and you've got Barbossa. And there'd be a little bit of conflict maybe with Barbossa, the crew threatening to mutiny, but most of the time it's just like, Norrington speaks for the Royal Navy, Barbossa speaks for the Black Pearl, Jack's his own thing. That's all your PCs need to track.
Yeah.
But what if you're not running for 11-year-olds? What if you're running for adults who maybe have complicated feelings about these movies, and especially Jack Sparrow these days?
Yeah. So, I think I can be vague enough that we're not going to need a content warning. Future Rachel might jump in and make me eat my words now.
Beep.
Because I think I can... I love you. I think I can cover a lot of it by saying historical pirates were bad. They were so bad in so many ways. Like, it's one of the reasons why it took me forever to like 3. Mm-hmm. Because I hated the opening so much. Mm-hmm. Because it's all this, like, yes, okay, like, clearly Becca was hanging everyone tangentially related to pirates, and that's bad. But suddenly turning it into the, oh no, poor little pirates who just want freedom are all being hanged.
They just want to sail around and drink rum. Mm-hmm. That's all they do all day.
Yeah, and no, you know what? All waters that do not have pirates in them today are better and happier waters.
You know, so go like on a cruise in Somalia if you really want to like hang out with sea first. If you love pirates, they're so cool.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you can play up some of the just and it doesn't even have to be in a way that's, like, going to require intense session zeroing and etc. It can just with how awful and violent and nasty and amoral they are. There doesn't have to be any other stuff involved. Another thing is really playing up the body horror. Like, there definitely is that in, you know, especially the Flying Dutchman.
Especially too good. Good Lord, like,
heavens,
you're not gonna do much better, like body horror wise, than some of the edge, like, background guys in the Flying Dutchman.
But, like, if you're getting stuff where you're getting to watch the transformations happen, like, we mentioned the idea of going in and saving a bootstrap build type character. If you knew him before, and then you get to see him now, have fun. Go nuts with the body horror. On a related note, if you're doing kind of like bespoke, coming up with your own cursed ships, you can get really creative with some of the curses and the nasty crews.
Yes.
Or even if you're doing some of like the previously, you know, done ships. The Black Pearl can have some just awful, nasty body horror zombies.
Yeah. Like, they kept the skeletons pretty, like, goofy theme park ride skeletons, but you could get gorier.
There are no viscera. You could have viscera.
You could have viscera.
And then, as always, kind of doing the opposite of what we're talking about with Aging Down. There's all the double crossing and everything, and the Aging Down, you want to have everybody have a heart of gold, and with the Aging Up, you can do the opposite of that. You can have people who seem to have a heart of gold and are just the worst. If you haven't listened to our Treasure Planet episode, because I know Treasure Planet is...
Shame on you. First point.
So if you have listened to it, you've heard this before.
Yeah.
But if you haven't listened to it, there's the whole bit in Treasure Planet where Silver gives a big speech to Jim about how he's got the potential for greatness and he needs to chart his own course. And in Treasure Island, like, he gives the equivalent of that speech to Jim. And then later, Jim overhears him giving exactly the same speech to a guy who's trying to convince him.
Yeah, to another guy, like,
So, doing something like that.
If you're one of our listeners, there's a chance that Treasure Planet is one of your big, like, touchstones for Treasure Island. And Silver in Treasure Island is much more of an amoral jerk.
He's chaotic evil.
Yeah,
like,
no,
hands down, he's the
monster.
Definition
like,
of chaotic
he's a
evil.
monster.
Like, he would feel bad if he ever had to kill Jim, but he would do it.
Yeah,
so, anyway, we're repeating ourselves from our Treasure Planet episode right now, so we'll stop.
Go listen to that.
But yeah.
So, like, we mentioned the influence of Jack Sparrow, like, do that.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is not... At the end of the day, as a heart of gold, he will sell you for a bottle of rum. Like, he will betray you in a second.
Yeah. From what I've heard, that would be a major reason to watch 5 if you wanted to see that, because apparently that is Jack Sparrow at his worst. Speaking of Jack Sparrow at his worst, actually, and his connections to a previous Darklord.
We always have the aging up, aging down, but sometimes we'll also include a full-on AU where we're like, you know what? We have our version of this setting, this universe, but there are other versions it could take. And there's some, you might say, like, oh, I love this, but I'm not feeling Davy Jones as a Darklord. And yeah, it's not like your average Disney movie where there is a singular, obvious Darklord.
You're not going to have anybody but the Wicked Queen for Snow.
Right, or Maleficent, Sleeping Beauty, So we have a couple of potential other Darklords for this setting. If you're I'm just not feeling Davy Jones.
Some of you might even have heard Davy Jones as our Darklord and been like, oh man, why not this guy?
Yeah, exactly.
And we're gonna discuss those guys now.
So the first, as transitioned, as implied, is you could have Jack Sparrow as a Darklord.
Yeah, we really strongly considered this.
Yes, no.
Almost made Jack Sparrow our Darklord.
We were planning to do Jack Sparrow as our Darklord before we did the rewatch.
Yeah.
And then we were like, okay, no, here's why we think Davy Jones works so well, as we mentioned in our qualities of a good Darklord.
But another major reason we didn't go with Jack Sparrow was we keep going back and citing Long John Silver and the stuff that we already did with Treasure Planet. Mm-hmm. And it's because he's great.
Yeah.
But he's basically Long John Silver all over again, and we already did that domain.
We already did that domain, so we're not we don't want to repeat ourselves. We wanted to do something more different, which we got with Davy Jones. Mm-hmm. But as Rachel mentioned, as a Darklord, this is the worst version of him. This is a combination of his lowest, most selfish moments in 2, and what we've heard about him in 5, his kind of lowest, most selfish moments in 5. This is like Jack Sparrow as described by someone who hates Jack Sparrow. He has no conscience. He sells anyone out the drop of a hat. He's very charismatic and very good at convincing people to kind of come along, but he always ends up selling them out.
Yeah. He'll convince you he has a heart of gold. He doesn't have a heart of gold. He has a heart of pyrite.
And this is kind of the built-in torment, that he wants to be captain, right? That's such a strong part of the character. He's always Captain Jack Sparrow. Mm-hmm. He wants to be captain. He wants to get the Black Pearl back. But the idea is he can never really be a captain because he has no loyalty to anyone, so he'll never have these kind of lasting relationships. Yeah.
That he kind of wants to cut off every relationship he has so that he doesn't have connections, he doesn't have anything holding him back. That includes your crew, buddy.
Yeah. In the franchise, we get this little, especially in the original trilogy, we get this kind of little core of loyal crew. So, Gibbs, the guy with the parrot, and, 3, Rigetti and what's-his-face?
Yeah.
And
Pintel, I think.
Barrett Gareth from the original Office.
Yeah, the little person.
Yeah, and 1 or 2 others that are consistently there. Not Zoe Saldana. She had aged it. She had moved beyond that franchise by 2 and 3.
Well, apparently she had a horrible. I haven't looked up details, but apparently she had a horrible experience with 1. So, yeah.
So you've got this core of 5 or 6 dudes. And they're following him from 1 on, and they're his crew, and they cry when he dies, and they're gonna go to the afterlife to get him back. And they're always oh no, we have to go back for Jack. The idea of they're really tight, they're really loyal. With 4, and I believe with 5, you at least still have Gibbs as kind of his right-hand man. But in the original trilogy, you have that little core of 5. They're no, they are his crew. He is their captain. They are loyal to him. They will risk anything to save him. And this version of Jack has none of that.
Yeah.
This version of Jack has sold those guys out.
Yeah. He either will or already has sold out Gibbs.
Yeah. They will
for nothing.
There will never be kind of a little loyal cadre or even a Gibbs-style loyal first mate. Mm-hmm. He will always end up alone because he will always sell everyone out. That means he can never really be a captain.
And he'll convince himself that's what he wants, but you know what? Then they're going to mutiny, because they're going to know that that's who he is, and that's how you get a mutinying Barbossa stealing your ship.
And as we're going to circle back, just kind of do a lot of what we did with Long John Silver.
Yeah, the themes in this domain, and the domain reflecting the Darklord, would be, again, that kind of idea of no loyalty, that idea of double crosses. Once again, that does fit pirates very well. Honestly, if you're not going to do something with both Pirates and Treasure Planet, this might be the way to go. Yeah. But since we are doing things with both Pirates and Treasure Planet, we
can't have this be our canon domain. Yeah. So our second of our options is Beckett, because he is really good villain. He's a really loathsome. I love his performance. I think that's going to be a really nice change of pace. For your PCs to have this just ice cold, calculating, utterly ruthless, utterly, scrupulous, utterly conscienceless monster. And Beckett's good if you want a pure villain, right? With Davy Jones, you have the tragedy and relatability. That is kind of the main reason not to do Beckett. He's just the
awful. Worst.
You don't have the tragedy and relatability.
Yeah. The other reason not to do Beckett, kind of the reason we went away from that, is the torment is that they got what they wanted, they lost what they had, which means there has to be some sense in which Beckett is ascendant, which means that the pirates are on the back foot, and that's not going to feel like a Pirates of the Caribbean if piracy isn't ascendant. But if that's the specific story you want to run, then Beckett is the Dark Lord for you.
Yeah. You want, it's especially nice, this might be a good aging down one, because this one lets you do the completely non-morally complex pirates. The pirates are
just Robin Hood.
They're just the Rebel Alliance from Star Wars. And he's the Emperor, and he's whatever, and he's just a jerk in a powdered wig. And your players, whatever, get to just thumb their nose at him and steal his pants and, like, whatever. And he's just this jerk, and you get to team up with Jack Sparrow and fight a jerk and steal his pants.
Yeah.
The torment here would be that he wants order, he wants control, he wants an ordered world. Like, I really... There's something here for a kind of setting. I don't think this is it, because it ends up being so undeveloped and so secondary. But, like, for me, it's really fascinating. I remember it was in the trailer for Pirates 2. He takes over Port Royale, and he's got the guy painting the giant map of the world on the wall. And he has the line where he's like, the blank spaces of the map are being filled in. And then later he has a line like, looking at the map, it's good to know exactly where everything is. And he wants this ordered world. But the torment is, and I wish they'd gone into this contradiction a little bit more, that he needs magic. He needs sort of superstition. He needs this kind of chaotic force of the unmapped world. This is a force from a world that is not divided into neat little squares to control that, or to make that order.
Yeah.
So you could get an interesting kind of like chaos order theme. And once again, maybe just you're hearing that, like, oh, I really want to do that story. And look at, Beckett. He represents order and control and law and the extremes of that taking over a setting, but there are still these blank spots on the map. Like, Jack Sparrow has a line about, like, Gibbs says something like, the old days or something, and the world is changing, and Jack says something like, it's not changing, it's getting smaller.
Yeah.
And then you have, like, they're fighting against kind of a world getting smaller.
Yeah. I was originally going to save this for the incorporating section, but this is specifically something about one of our Dark Lord AUs. I'm going to go ahead and bring it in here. And that's, again, we mentioned this in the Treasure Planet episode, but the original Dark Lord of the Sea of Sorrows, instead of being the pirate, it was more of like the map into the Northwest Passage kind of thing. And his torment was that the islands in the Sea of Sorrows kept shifting.
Oh.
And that could be a really good kind of torment for Beckett, that everything's always changing on him. He wants to fill in the map, but it's never going to quite be filled in right. And it might even just be little subtle changes. Like, it's mostly like Port Royale's always still there.
But that'll be enough.
Yeah, just even a couple little island changes here and there is going to be enough.
He can never, like, have his big map and say the world. Like, I have gridded the world. I have the coordinates of everything in the world.
Yeah.
And that would be a torment for a certain type of person.
Yeah. And especially, like, since we have Calypso existing in this world, you have the idea of the ocean itself rebelling against him. Maybe you could even have the idea that sometimes islands will just get swallowed up by tsunamis and they're gone. And then new islands will suddenly rise up out of the sea.
And then finally, a third potential Dark Lord, one we thought pretty hard about, because he's a great Dark Lord.
Oh, he's so great.
Really good Dark Lord, is Barbossa.
Yeah.
Like, he has a torment.
He has a torment. He has an active ultimate darkness.
He has an active ultimate darkness.
He mutinies.
He matches.
The circle of hell is for mutineers.
He has the, like, element of tragedy and relatability with the torment. Because also he's really well acted.
You feel so bad that he doesn't get that apple.
He reflects the domain. He reflects the setting.
Yeah.
And the only reason we need Barbossa is his goal is too specific.
Yes.
There's one thing he wants. There's one, like, story about Barbossa. It's Curse of the Black Pearl. Whereas Davy Jones is much more expansive. There's a whole bunch of different stories. His whole thing is much more like the whole ocean, the whole everything.
You could have, like, if your big bad is a Blackbeard or a Salazar, then you could, or even a Barbossa, then you could have the idea of have Davy Jones in the background being the guy who's, like, setting the mold for all this stuff.
Yeah, they're sort of following the template. So, yeah, that's really the reason we chose Davy Jones over Barbossa.
But he's so great.
Right. But
probably my favorite character.
If you are doing a one-shot, if you are not like, I want to do a really long campaign here with lots of islands and lots of this and that, if you're like, I want to come in, do 2-3 sessions in the Pirates of the Caribbean, and then scoot out to back to Barovia.
And I want those sessions to be Curse of the Black Pearl, more or less.
You can just do, like, Curse of the Black Pearl, amazing one-shot story.
Yes.
Just, there's a piece of this, the last piece of the treasure, falls in the hands of an NPC they care about, a Weatherman Foxcrow, whatever, and it's a sort of race back and forth to rescue that person and try and deal with these undead pirates. And this could be perfect for Aging Down as well, because I don't think kids would love to just meet Jack Sparrow and do Black Pearl and follow the story beats. Or if you're just, you know what, my group is just they're not gonna mind that we're kind of doing a version of this same story with the same setup and the same framing story with the same NPCs. They're just gonna have fun with like a session or two, you know, me doing my bad Jack Sparrow impression and my good Barbossa impression.
They're gonna be delighted that we're doing this nautical adventure, and then it gets sprung on them that, surprise, it's Curse of the Black Pearl!
Curse of the Black Pearl! And, like, they're gonna love the kind of, we know what we need to get to gold, we need to do this and this, and maybe we'll pretend to not know what's going on. We all know what's going on.
Yeah.
We're, like, waiting for you to say the moon, like, oh, look at the sky, is the moon out? Is the moon out? Is the moon out?
Or maybe you could throw in some monkey wrenches. Like, even right now, maybe you're thinking, this is the thing that I'm going to throw in to, like, you know, make this surprising for them. So they think they know what's going on, but they don't. And we're not going to come up with any of those because this isn't our primary storyline. But if you come up with any, we want to hear about it.
So, so Barbossa absolutely makes a perfect Darklord. And if you are doing a one-shot and you don't mind doing a retread of Curse of the Black Pearl, have fun. He's great.
Yes, he's fantastic.
So, many options we presented you for running this for many different groups, many potential multiverse branches of this particular domain. And let's wrap up our discussion of the domain we're calling Davy Jones's Locker and give you our parting thoughts in a section we like to call
Parting Thoughts.
So the first thing I want to talk about in the parting thoughts section is the genres of horror. This is from Fenriken's Guide to Ravenloft. We say every episode, it's probably the best part of that book. We both loved it. It's a great, like, breaking down horror into these different genres and then talking about sort of the hallmarks and signifiers of those genres, the type of stories you tell, and it's really useful for saying sort of, what do I do with this domain? What kind of story am I telling?
Yeah.
And this one, I feel like, I hate repeating ourselves, but I feel like there's a couple of very strong contenders that we have seen in the recent past. So, first, I kind of got two ideas. One's going to be a little repetitive from last episode. I'm thinking Gothic and Ghost Story.
I was thinking about Gothic. Ghost Story, definitely.
Yeah, Ghost Story. You're in one. Yes, you're in one.
I was thinking about Gothic, but I'm actually leaning dark fantasy.
Oh,
because it's so, like, everything is the magic that, like, even with, you know, Barbossa and, you know, the curse on them and they're being undead and everything, it's not just sort of straight up ghosts, it's that they came up with this, like, magical curse.
Right. No, I like that. Yeah, Ghost Story and dark fantasy. And the Ghost Story, obviously, it's not always ghosts. In some cases, it is, you know, basically ghosts, like Barbossa and their skeleton pirates. But it's always that kind of ghost story of, it's about figuring out the past. It's about sort of learning about the past. A lot of times about righting some wrong of the past. And that's kind of how you resolve the story. You know, even like with your Pirates 3, there's a couple of this idea of you sort of learn the story of Calypso and what happened and all that, and kind of trying to work to right the wrong that was done.
So here's a question.
Yeah.
Are you thinking more Ghost Story and dark fantasy or Gothic and dark fantasy? Because Gothic and Ghost Story are so interconnected. It's kind of got that same, like, the past affecting the present.
I think I would be leaning toward Gothic just because Ghost Story is so tied up with being ghosts specifically. Yeah. And Gothic is broader. So even you can have, like, there are not technically any ghosts on the Flying Dutchman, but it's such a Gothic setting of this just huge, crazy, barnacle-covered monster ship with the crew. That's something we always see. We're going to talk about more in a moment. The idea of the cursed captain and his cursed crew, and there's always some kind of like physical, and sometimes it's undead like the skeletons, or I've heard Pirates 5.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's, they're crazy fish people. They're crazy barnacle fish people who are like merging, and that part of the ship, part of the crew, they kind of are merging into this ship. That's such a great Gothic thing.
It is.
That's such a great Gothic thing.
Or even like thinking about it, I think the only ghost that we have in Pirates is actually Salazar in Pirates 5. Because like even with the Black Pearl,
right?
Barbossa may be saying you best start believing in ghost stories,
right?
But they didn't have to be undead. They could have been anything. It's not like they all died, you know.
And like they're not gone. They don't go into the light at the end, or go to the other side or anything. They're just back to being humans again.
Yeah.
So I absolutely Gothic and dark fantasy, and it's a very like ghost story adjacent, like another narrative beats are going to be a ghost story, but it's that broader category of Gothic. And
I'm sorry, Barbossa. First, we didn't make you the Darklord, and now we are directly contradicting you.
Yes.
And you came right out and told us what the genre was.
Yeah.
But, sorry, man.
And then dark fantasy, as you mentioned, like so much of the stories are driven by magic. And about like finding... And it's almost always like dark magic. It's almost always a kind of curse. Or some, curse or something. So it's all is sort of about like finding and breaking. It's almost always like, it's kind of interesting to think about, but there's really almost never like good magic. There's like magic they can use for good, but it's always like super dangerous.
Yeah.
So even the sort of, like going to the World's End, like figuring out the ritual to go to World's End, it's like, it's really dangerous.
Yeah.
And, releasing.
Approve, I'm sure,
right. Releasing Calypso, everything with the Fountain of Youth in 4, this like, the magic, you can take life, but you have to take life from someone.
Yeah.
Unleashing Calypso is probably the right thing to do, but it's a super dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, possibly about to get them killed.
Yeah. So that's a very, like, the fantasy, it's a lot of magic, it's a lot of the supernatural driving the stories, but it's always this very dark, dangerous magic. So, I think great call on that.
Thank you.
Obviously, as with many of our very big, broad domains that you can do lots of stuff in, because, once again, we're spoiling it a little bit, that this is a very big, broad domain.
I mean, they got 5 movies out of it.
Yeah, they have 5 movies out of it. And that you have a lot of other genres you could do. So, I said Davy Jones' ship, body horror.
Body horror.
There's
so much body horror.
All of the sort of cursed ship crews have elements of body horror.
Ghost stories, we don't list it.
Ghost stories, and just any other kind of story you want to do, any other kind. It could be you go to the island and waste everyone's time for 20 minutes and kind of do a full horror thing.
Or a slasher.
Or slasher, and then you're back. Now back to the show. And then you go back to the actual gosh dang story for the movie.
The mermaids actually be great slasher monsters.
Great slasher monsters, Or even you could have like folk horror-y elements of the like... They're sort of sending these guys out and doing the ritual, sort of attract the mermaids, and a full-on proper folk horror. You could totally, if I told you Pirate 6 was going to have a like weird island that sacrifices people to the sea, then you're like, yeah, sure,
yeah. You could do, like, if you wanted to bring us stuff with On Stranger Tides, you could do some, like, psychological horror stuff if they're preparing you to be some kind of sacrifice and just, like, gaslighting you all up in the movie theater. Yeah.
Mind controlling you, yeah. Absolutely, pretty much anything you want to do. The second thing I'd like to talk about is something I've stepped into a little bit. What a smooth transition that was. And that's what kind of game this is good for, because you have got some campaign settings, some domains like Barovia or Darkon, where it is just months and months and months and months of play and a ton of NPCs and a ton of subplots you could potentially do and plot hooks. And, Curse of Strahd is even just taking this smaller version of Barovia and running a level 1 to 10 campaign in it. Other domains are more like there's really built for one specific story. So, folk horror, Tempest in 5e is really designed to be this one specific, like, Wicker Man, Midsommar adjacent story that for your players to do.
Yeah.
And that's great. No shade on the Tempests of the world. But what do you think about this one, love?
We got 5 movies out of it. So,
this is a Barovia. This is a Darkon. This is just...
We even had a whole thing talking about if you didn't want to go head-to-head with the Darklord, which I think all of these one-shot domains have to go head-to-head with the Darklord.
Yes.
And I feel like that's actually a good test for if it's a one-shot domain or not, is can you have a really cool, really engrossing storyline where you never encounter the Darklord?
So, like, even, I'm not an expert on, but Harakir, it's like, it kind of gets underutilized, but you could totally run months of play in there. There's so many, and not engage Mummy Man at all. Like, just stuff with there's...
Octopods.
You know, whatever. Or as his friends call him, Mummy Man.
Mummy Man.
And you've got, like, other mummy men and women. You've got... like, you know, got sort of like politics among the kind of quote-unquote gods, among Octopod's children and their temples, and you've got like searching, you know, dungeon diving into pyramids to look for treasures and all sorts of just really great stuff you could do just running around spooky Egypt. But just, that's months of thing, and so is this. You could have dozens and dozens of sessions, dozens of adventures, dozens of random plot-bearing islands. I think we've mentioned before, Ghost of Saltmarsh is an incredible resource. If you're considering a nautical game as this or any other setting, you should get a copy of Ghost of Saltmarsh. It's got so much useful stuff. It's got some ship rules. It's got, you know, lots of deck plans. And it's got, I think this is the most useful part, just charts and charts and charts of, like, random stuff generator. So it's got, like, random weather phenomenon. It's got random crises on the ship.
Nice.
Yeah, right? It's got, and I think this one's super useful for this specifically, it's got a series of random island generator charts that, like, you roll what type of island it is, and you roll, and then there'll be a chart for each type of island to roll what sort of creatures live there, and then some of them will have, like, one of them is, like, island with a secret, like, here's a chart of secrets, so you can just, like, generate a whole little story from an island they find from that chart, and once again, this is a setting where you can just go island, 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 story. And one of the nice things is, you can go beyond just random island, 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 story. And it's that since we have 5 of these ding-dang movies, they have a very strong thematic hallmarks.
Yeah. And we are, all credit here is going to Ryan George of Pitch Meeting on YouTube, which if you haven't watched his videos, you should. They're great.
Not that he needs us to promote
No.
You should promote us. Ryan George, if you're listening, promote us.
Seriously. But no, he's hilarious.
Yeah, no, he's really fun.
But, you know, we watched the pitch meetings for all of these movies, and that is the only thing that we watched for Pirates 5. And watching all of them in a row, you know, we were hearing of, say, all of the, is it going to have this, and this? Of course, it's a Pirates movie. So, and that gave us a good sense of what a Pirates movie is.
Right. So what would you say are some of the hallmarks of a Pirates movie?
Well, what I would say, and what Ryan George would say, is you have a captain of a cursed ship. They've got some kind of magical crew, usually undead, but not always.
Right, unless they're fish people.
And they might not all be undead, because, you know, Blackbeard's, there were some zombies, but there were also a lot of just kind of dragooned sailors. They're after some kind of magical nautical MacGuffin.
Right.
And then there are a bunch of sub-MacGuffins to fill the movie's runtime.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, they're after Davy Jones' heart, but in order to find the heart, they need to get the compass working, and they also need the key to be able to open the chest, and Jack needs the jar of dirt to be able to protect him from... So get your sub-MacGuffins to, you know, the 6 other crystal babies before you find the 7th.
Even in the first one, which... I feel like it's not controversial to say it's the best.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things, they kept it simpler. It was kind of like the 2 big MacGuffins. Really only 2. And it was the coin, and it was Elizabeth and then Will.
Yeah,
it was the Turner blood. And it was just kind of tracking who's got those 2 things as the movie goes on. Whereas, once again, by Dead Man's Chest, you've got a much more, like, go to the prison to get the blueprint so I can find the key, so I can find this, so I can find the chest, and then get the compass. Use the magic compass to find the chest. And
You've got your multiple factions and shifting loyalties. As we mentioned, the first one's the simplest one. You've just got the Black Pearl, the heroes, and the Navy.
Right, yeah.
Later, things get really complex.
Yes. Boy, do they.
Yeah. This, honestly, you know, once again, I went and read on Stranger Tides, which I hadn't read before, and It comes by, like, honestly, Stranger Tides, I think, is more confusing than any of these books when it comes to, like, everyone who has a POV chapter and several characters who don't have their own distinct agendas, except Beth Herwood. She's the MacGuffin.
Mm-hmm. She's the MacGuffin.
Tim Powers has written some great female characters. Beth is not one of them. So, yeah, you've got lots of your shifting loyalties, shifting alliances, and your PCs have to figure out where they stand there. And some kind of love story. Like, there's always the younger people. It's never like Jack's... Well... No, even in Stranger Tides, because you had the preacher and the mermaid.
Yeah, that was more like the love story.
Yeah.
There's and a lot of times this is in contrast to Jack Sparrow, sort of the more cynical womanizer. You've got the sort of pure young love.
So if you want to introduce that element and have, like, there be, maybe if they have to rescue somebody, then it can be someone's love interest has been captured and you're hired to go save them.
Or like two of the NPCs on the ship fall for each other.
Yeah.
You get to be, oh, that's sweet.
And then random remixed nautical / pirate / magical stuff that the audience has heard of.
Yeah, like, these movies are really just, they make a big wheel and think of every, like, nautical thing that the audience might have heard of and then just keep spinning the wheel.
Yeah, because there's a very little that they just straight up make up. A lot of it is just kind of like taking nautical stuff you're familiar with and throwing it in a blender and drinking what comes out. Sometimes you get some very creative stuff with that.
Yeah.
So, Pieces of Eight, those are a thing we've heard of.
Yeah, exactly.
Pieces of Eight. Then, we've heard of the Brethren Court. They were mentioned in the first movie, so we'll throw that in there. And Calypso, Goddess of the Sea.
Right.
And
We've heard of Goddesses of Seas.
And you throw that in, and then you get, like, the Brethren Court use the Pieces of Eight to bind Calypso into human form. And that's something, I'm not trying to say that these are derivative because they're throwing everything into a blender and drinking what comes out, because, that's not a thing that's been done before. It's just that's what you do. Those are the elements you use, or these very, like, basic familiar elements, and then you throw them together and get Calypso being bound in her bones, which, wow, that's a beautiful turn of phrase.
Or even, like, going from 1 to 2 and 3, it's like, well, there's Davy Jones, You know him.
Yeah.
And he's got a locker. And he's the captain of the Flying Dutchman. You probably heard of that.
Yeah,
and he's got the dead man's chest, like the Yo-Ho-Ho song, and a bottle of rum. Or even, like, a great example, like Stranger Tides, we mentioned, the movie very loosely adapts the book.
Yeah.
It
has Blackbeard in it.
Taking, like, the basic premise of the movie that Blackbeard is trying to get to the Fountain of Youth is from the book. But they add this whole thing about how you need a mermaid's tear to activate the Fountain of Youth. And that's not anywhere in the book. And it's because they wanted to have mermaids. And I'm glad they did, because the mermaid attack scene is one of the best in the movie.
Yeah.
And I love that part. But you could even see, they're like, okay, what's left on the wheel that we haven't... Mermaids! Mermaids, of course.
Yeah.
This is a lot of the building blocks of an adventure. Of like, okay, I need to have an adventure, I need to have the captain, and the ship, and they're cursed, and they're spooky, and there's a MacGuffin, and maybe some sub-MacGuffins, and there's factions. Like, that's a lot of the work done already to build around that framework.
Yeah, no, this is a fantastic story engine.
But it is broad enough that you can do a whole bunch of different adventures with those basic pillars.
Yeah.
And so in the DM's Guild write-up, we always do a free write-up of the domain in the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft style. In the DM's Guild write-up for this domain, I am going to include a chart of just random nautical stuff. So if you're like, I want to make a pirate's adventure, and once again, if any of these are in 5, I apologize, I haven't seen it, but you could roll on this chart and be like, oh, my MacGuffin will be a magic, roll, sextant. And it's going to involve roll, the spooky lighthouse. And roll, killer sharks. Jaws. So yeah, and you know what? You could see a Pirates movie having a whole sequence with a magic sextant, a spooky lighthouse, and a Jaws shark.
Yeah. We will put a pin in Jaws sharks. We'll get back to that.
Yeah, so infinite plot generator. If you want to have that engagement with Davy Jones, if you're like, I really want to, he's the Darklord, he's really cool, especially if you're sort of, this for a one shot. If you're like, I want to go have this like one adventure, and I want to be like the full Pirates of the Caribbean experience, then fundamentally an adventure about Davy Jones is getting Davy Jones to do something.
Yeah, we talked about this, so we're not going to go into too much detail because we talked about it earlier, but you get tangled with Davy Jones and you're trying to get him to do something, and he will, because once you get him bound by his worth, then he will.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a matter of getting him bound.
And maybe that something could involve a magic sextant, and a spooky lighthouse, and a jar shark. And somehow those pieces come together to get Davy Jones to do his dang job. And help your NPC's favorite second cousin pass peacefully to the great beyond. So, what if I really like this and I want to incorporate it into the older material, the kind of 2E, 3E, like unified core setting, but I also want to have Pirates of the Caribbean? Is there stuff that overlaps?
I have been waiting my entire life for this moment. Okay, so I'm skipping past the first thing in our outline, even though it's all caps, Boritsi Trading Company, my love. Because you know what's after that? I don't know. It's Ivan is after that. I don't know. It's my boy. So, in the older material bingo, I love Ivan. My thoughts
like
on Ivan
pretty
are a matter
well
of public
established.
record. His curse, as written, was not great. Because it was this whole, like, he had been this big, like, gourmet or whatever. He had like a very refined palate. And so when he became a Darklord, he lost all sense of taste. And so, like, everything he ate tasted like ashes in his mouth. And since he's also immune to all poisons, then that meant that pretty quickly he could be like, oh, I can, like, have these, you know, big dinner parties and serve everybody plates full of rotting meat. And I'm not going to get food poisoning. And I'm going to watch them choke it down and laugh at them. Or sometimes he would, like, give these dinner parties with delicious foods. And he would watch them eat and live vicariously through them while they ate, but they couldn't enjoy it too much because then he'd get mad. You can see how we're going with this. And usually he'd alternate the two. You'd get the foie gras and the, like, delicious pastries, and then you would get the dinner courses from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And the way that I have always run Ivan is, instead of just doing taste stuff, I've had him have Barbossa's curse.
Right, that makes so much sense that it feels like this is one of those things that's just going to be a fanon that eventually just sort of takes over the like canon thing.
Yeah. Like all the stuff with, you know, Ivan is very big on torture, and that's gonna go right hand in hand. If you can't, like, feel any physical pain, it's going to be really cutting into your sense of empathy. Borka's got a certain vibe, you know, wink wink.
Certain Renaissance.
Certain Renaissance,
reputation,
decadence,
yes.
hedonism, and debauchery. And that's going to, you know, again, very much the living vicariously through, and then getting really super mad about the things that you can't have. So this isn't even like an incorporating, like, bringing the older material into the newer material. This is if you're running OG Borka, or you want to bring some elements, which you should be, or you want to bring elements of OG Borka into new Borka, then you could do a lot worse than watching the scene where Barbossa is feeding Elizabeth and watching her eat and just staring at her with just this ravenous, desperate hunger in his eyes, and just putting that straight over on Ivan.
He gives you the feast and it's just sort of wide-eyed watching, half vicarious enjoyment, half bitter anger. As you stuff your face with delicious food.
And then you eat the apple, and he gets really mad and tears out your tongue, because that's the last thing you're ever going to taste by Cracky, because you get to enjoy that and he doesn't.
He just wants an apple.
So, now that I've been self-indulgent and done my incorporating this into the older material rather than the other way around. Boritsi Trading Company, my love. This is like our big, like, trading company that we have in both the older material and 5e. So this is going to be a big obvious rival to have with the East India Trading Company. They're going to be butting heads. They're going to be jockeying for, like, trade contracts and trade agreements and trying to get the other ones tariffed. Like, Ivana and Beckett are just going to be butting heads nonstop, and it's going to be great, and there's going to be a horrible trade war, and you can have so much fun with that.
And this is even a nice, like, we mentioned this before with some of them, with, like, Radigan, that this is a nice, like, everybody here is awful and the jerk, but you could have the whole, Ivana's the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
And this is, like, if you have some Borka stuff going on, which you should, like, this could be, like, you owe her a favor, or this pays a debt, or she'll let some friend of the PCs out of Ivana jail if they go take care of this. And you're like, you know what, she's the lesser of two evils. Like, because this is, like, she's not using magic to destroy every other merchant. And for a party rejecting that logic, you could even have a whole, okay, but we need to restore the status quo because the more these two fight, the more the people in the middle get crushed.
Yeah.
Like we gotta get these two to stop fighting, and a great way to do that is to get rid of the magical squid that Beckett is using to monopolize the sea lanes.
That's crushing all of these Boritsi Trading Company ships that just have, like, random innocent sailors on them.
Yeah, and then just, mysterious rash of food poisoning breaking out in the East India Company trading ship stores, and just like, you're like, oh, this is like hundreds of people are dying every day. We have to we have to stop
for the crime of being sailors.
Yeah, we have to stop this.
Yeah. We mentioned earlier Peter Van Rees, the previous Darklord of the Sea of Sorrows, and kind of his curse. There are other, like, nautical NPCs and nautical Darklords that poured over beautifully to this domain. One that, going back to the Jaw Shark, one that works really well, I'm going to link to this in the show notes, because it's Draga Saltbiter was the Darklord of Saragosse. And the great thing with Draga Saltbiter was that he came from the Sword Coast originally, so he gets a giant write-up on the Forgotten Realms wiki,
Ooh, nice.
which is way more detailed than the Mystipedia wiki.
Thanks, Forgotten Realms fans.
Thanks, Forgotten Realms fans.
Obsessive nerds in this giant, like, Byzantine Empire history of a franchise.
So I'm going to link to that in the show notes, but the stuff about him, especially the stuff kind of right before he became a Darklord, because by the time he becomes a Darklord, he's, like, cursed to the point where he actually becomes a much less interesting villain, I think. Like, he loses a lot of kind of his agency and mobility when he becomes a Darklord. But if you have it kind of, this is, you're tangling with him in Davy Jones's locker right before he becomes a Darklord, it's like he was a sailor, and as a boy he was taken by pirates, and they, like, dangled him over the ocean for shark baiting, and he survived, but he was bitten, but it turned out to be a wereshark. And so, like, he was biding his time on the pirate ship, and then eventually, like, let him mutiny and took over, and now he's this, like, vicious pirate captain, and he's also, like, whenever he takes ships, then he'll go kill some of the people, and then he'll have some of them be, like, dangled over in shark baits for, so that his infamy will grow. And because he's a wereshark, he has control over sharks.
Ooh,
so you can, like, summon them all, and you can have the whole, like, gothic changing to reflect his sins of, like, maybe everybody on his ship is slowly turning into shark people.
I love that. That's awesome.
So you can, bam, you have a cursed ship full of shark people.
That's awesome.
And they've got control over all these sharks, probably including a giant jaw shark, and they're sending them after you.
Definitely a giant jaw shark.
Definitely a giant jaw shark. We mentioned Peter Van Rees for Cutler Beckett. Another thing that you could do with him, there are two factions from older Ravenloft material. One is a Lamordian faction called the Syndicate of Enlightened Thought.
What a non-ominous name.
I know, right? And the other is one from Paradon/Zarisia called the Divinity of Man.
Bunch of non-ominously named buddies hanging out in their domains.
And the Syndicate of Enlightened Thought, they're basically, for all of you mage people out there, they were like the Ravenloft technocracy. They're your classic, they believe in science and they want to stamp out magic. And Cutler Beckett is all over these guys.
That's perfect for him.
So you can have him working with them. You can have, he's in contact with Victor Mordenheim because she loves science.
Right,
they don't really approve of each other, but they both love science. And it has all this stuff in, it was Gazetteer too that they appeared in, all of these, like, organizations that the Syndicate of Enlightened Thought was funding. And some of them were kind of your obvious, like, kind of anti-magic, like insurgents in Darkon and Aslan or whatever. And others were less obvious, like, in the older material, there was, like, this really superstitious anti-Fae Inquisition in Tempest. And they were funding them because they, they were stamping out some real magic users, which is great, and they were also making the idea of magic look ridiculous, which is also great. So that could be a cool thing to look at for, giving Cutler Beckett kind of wider influence for his big plans. Finding a group that, like, hooks you in to his, like, web. Yeah.
So, like, you start with, here's this group of, like, witch hunters. And you kind of trace their thought. They seem to have this, like, political support and funding and, like, this mysterious patron. And that leads you back to the East India Company.
Oh, I love that, yeah. And then the Divinity of Man, they were more or less the Friends of Humanity from X-Men.
Now, a much more topical reference than it would have been when we first worked on this script.
And they got started in Paradon / Arisia, where it makes perfect sense, because they're like, hey, let's kill all the doppelgangers.
Yeah.
But, they're really against all other non-humans, too, including demi-humans.
What is an elf but a doppelganger with pointy ears who can't change his shape?
Other than that, exactly the same. So that could be another thing for Cutler Beckett to have his fingers in, because you get that this guy does not like anyone who doesn't look exactly like him.
Yeah, and that even is another way to hook in if you get this sense of suddenly there's this kind of persecution, crackdown, purges of, like, non-humans. And then, like, kind of following that thread back to, the guy is using the East India Company to promote this sort of speciesist rationalist world.
Yeah. And then, the last thing in this, which I am almost as excited to talk about this as I was to talk about Vorlog.
Very
Tom
exciting.
is almost as curious.
Yes, it says chicken bone ? On the notes. So,
he's been staring at chicken bone in our outline for a while.
Chicken bone?
Chicken bone. So, Chicken Bone was an NPC in Saranya. He was this, like, Voodoo plot generator. And he was...
the best kind of plot generator.
And it was super cool, and you can take his exact gimmick and give it to Tia Dalma, and it's awesome. Because, so Chicken Bone's whole thing was you would go to him for sympathetic magic favors, usually cursing your enemies. And the whole thing, he had this whole, like, sympathetic magic. This is how they, handled Voodoo in second edition. If you had a personal effect of, the person that you were asking him to curse, then if he was in range of that thing, then he was in range of them.
Ooh.
So he could do it. You give him a fingernail.
That's really good. Yeah.
You give him a fingernail. He touch attacks the fingernail. He's touching it. He's touch attacking that person.
Freaking cool. Yeah. It's like slows a touch attack or in like a 30-foot range or something. But like it's a infinity foot range.
Yeah.
So on 30 feet of this fingernail.
So that alone is like a fun thing for, suddenly all this random stuff, horrible stuff is happening to you, and it turns out that it's because somebody took a lock of your hair to Tia Dalma. But the price that he would call in for doing this for you was always you would leave behind a lock of your own hair.
Ooh.
So this is some, like, the money lender from Name of the Wind stuff going on here. And then when he had a favor that he needed to call in from you, he would make sure that you knew that he wanted you. He would find a way, and you would go to him, and you better do whatever he wants you to do, because otherwise he's casting Disintegrate on your hair when you least expect it.
That's awesome.
I know, right?
Like, it's super just taking those mechanics and either having him as his own thing or porting them over to Tia Dalma. Perfect.
It works great for Tia Dalma. Just, can't you see Tia Dalma, like, Jack Sparrow goes to her for help with his Davy Jones problem and, like, gives her some personal effect of his. Yeah. And then the, like, plot device for the next movie is that she's calling him in with it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Plenty of hooks into that old material from a lot of different perspectives. So if you were running a kind of classic 2E3 unified core game, you could still have Jack Sparrow and Davy Jones and all this good piratey movie nonsense in it. The last thing I want to talk about is the strengths and challenges of running stuff in this domain. Strength is great. Pirates are cool. Ghost pirates are even cooler.
Mm-hmm.
There is this really strong hook. So I kind of like there's a lot of overlap between the movies. It's clearly they took the first movie and were like, okay, how do we make this the template for every movie we're doing? Mm-hmm. But that means this has the adventures here have a strong flavor. It's not just like the Treasure Island domain with more zombies. Mm-hmm. Like, no, it's the adventures running in this have these really strong structural and like thematic touchstones. So like, no, it's about a MacGuffin. It's about a curse. It's about a captain with a spooky ship. And then we have a great Darklord with Davy Jones, and not just a great like story, but a great plot engaging Darklord. Yeah. Because he's like there's a lot of ways the PCs could need to interact with him, like stuff they need from him or they need to stop him from doing. And it can come out a couple different ways. And a lot of amazing mini bosses. A lot of like sub Darklord villains. Just having Beckett, having Barbossa. Like just once again, Almost Ride Your Times was not the best, but Ian McShane's Blackbeard was freaking great.
Ian McShane is anything. It's
great. The best. So you've got a ton of villains to draw from. You have a lot of archetypes of villains, just looking at cool. You know, you could have a Long John Silver. You could have, like, whatever kind of fictional or historical pirate character you want to bring in that you think is cool. Also, once again, you've got Ghost of Saltmarsh we mentioned. That does a lot of the work for you. Like, a lot of the, like, here's the research and rules I have to come up with to run this game. No, that's already there in Ghost of Saltmarsh. But, Rachel, what about some of the challenges?
This is a first for us.
Yeah.
Challenges is blank.
Yeah, it's just...
we tried to think of... This is just... It's so great, guys. There's monsters. There's a very D&D story engine. Like, the only challenge I could think of, because I was staring at this blank space, like, I have to say something. Right. And the only challenge I can think of is if you do want to get kind of intense with the horror, then you're going to have trouble with it because all of your players are going to be doing their Jack Sparrow impressions. Yes. That is it. That's it. That is it.
No, it's just... Even, that's a good point. It's not just there's this great story engine that gives you a structure so it has flavor, but it's varied. It's a story engine that fits D&D very well. Like, a Pirates of the Caribbean movie is a great D&D movie. Even just, it's all about getting a magic item to something with the curse. And you've got this, like, sort of monstrous faction that's right after you, or it's racing you for the map. It's such a Dungeons & Dragons story. Yeah.
Like, the only thing we have is that if you're doing kind of your Kingdom Hearts Disney World Tour domain, you can't really have both this and Treasure Planet. But that's it. Like,
extremely limited.
Only, like...
problem situation. So, first for us, A+.
Yep. Just,
So, before we rejoin our narrator and find out what drier place she's going next, our final live action of the summer, which is not in any way a blockbuster.
Not in any way a blockbuster.
Not a huge flop. Like, huge is a bit much, but pretty floppy. Pretty flop adjacent.
We do...
Blockbuster in my heart, though.
I love you. We do what we want to say real quick, because otherwise...
We're going to be disappointed.
Because I'm sure some of you were like, they're doing live action stuff, and they keep talking about how this is a live action movie that was a flop, but not in their hearts. It's only not a flop in Tom's heart. It's a flop in my heart. Flop in Rachel's heart. Which lets you know, it's not Hocus Pocus.
Yes. We're a flop in neither of our hearts.
No, we love Hocus Pocus. We're reserving the right to do live-action Halloween movies as October episodes still, because there aren't enough animated Disney spooky movies. Yeah. So we actually, it's not going to be Hocus Pocus. We are planning on doing a live-action spooky movie this coming October. So if you were like, yay, live-action summer Hocus Pocus, woohoo!
Unlike Disney, we're not going to do Hocus Pocus in July.
Yeah. Love you.
When we do Hocus Pocus, it's gonna be in
October as God intended.
Yeah, right?
And also, our narrator is Danny Dennison. We're not doing Hocus Pocus this early in her arc. Like,
if you didn't know that, hi. Go back and listen to Prince and the Frog episode.
So, I can't see a universe where Hocus Pocus isn't our final October episode.
So sorry.
Sorry, guys.
People have been requesting it since the beginning, but...
It will happen, we promise.
It's just not for a while.
It's just, for plot reasons, it's going to be a climactic thing. But we do have one more summer blockbuster coming that has nothing to do with Halloween, which Tom loves and I tolerate. And
you'll find out shortly. But before you find out what that is, how can they contact us to complain that we're not doing Hocus Pocus? We shattered their heart. They had a whole dramatic arc of hope and despair in the course of this section.
Well, you can email us at wonderfulworldofdarklords@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook or Tumblr at Wonderful World of Darklords. We are out of Tumblr jail, so
yay!
You can find us on Patreon at Wonderful World of Darklords. And yeah, I believe those are our socials.
Yeah. And if you like our adaptation of this, kind of are trying to use this to create a story engine, I've got a couple of horror movies that I've adapted to adventures. If you like our thoughts about running this for your kid that loves Pirates of the Caribbean, it's their favorite movie, then we have a couple of resources for running spookier, more Halloween-y adjacent stuff with younger gamers. And speaking of spooky younger people,
I have a picture book, Mother Ghost, Nursery Rhymes for Little Monsters. That's exactly what it sounds like. For spooky older people, you can also go to my website, www.rachelkohler.com, where I have some of my short stories for adults available for free. I don't think any of them are nautical horror, sadly. I need to
tragically.
Yeah.
Until next time, when blocks will be busted in my heart. Thank you for listening, and happy gaming.
Parting thoughts. After drying off and enduring a surreal and meandering conversation with the bearer of the magic compass, apologies, Captain Bearer of the Magic Compass, I departed Davy Jones' locker. Perhaps Mary Read will spend the rest of her days hunting for some magical item that will allow her to rescue her lover, or to exact revenge upon me. I wish I had not been forced to repay her kindness with betrayal. Had I not intervened, however, she would have tried to fight Davy Jones, which would surely have led to her death, or to bargain with him, which would have led to even worse. I do not need a mist talisman for my next destination, as my patron has informed me that it is accessible through some odd artifact. I have arrived safely in the sanctum of the wizard Kevin Flynn, and am attempting to discover how to turn on his magical device. I will report further when I make progress in this area.
End of line.
Unlike Flynn's archipelago, at least the seafaring crews of Davy Jones' locker battle over potent magical treasures and not mere coin. It is intriguing that pirates may have developed a code of honor from the influence of the local government. Such codes amongst criminals are often referred to as guidelines more than actual rules. But perhaps these pirates value their honor more than plunder. As fascinating as the politics of pirates are, my little servant's description of the magical items scattered through Davy Jones' locker hold the most interest to my person, particularly the compass, an item that points to the desires of one's heart. Many a dread lord of these misty realms would give practically anything to get their hands on such an item. Unfortunately, such desires are often twisted beyond recognition by our ever-present tormentors. One wonders, would this compass point to one's true desires, or merely serve as another form of torment? I theorize these magical items have surfaced through the locker as a way to further torment Davy Jones. They each serve a means to locate his heart, and he must defend it. Such constant vigilance must distract him from his true desires. Regardless, such items should not fall into the hands of pirates, and should be placed in the hands of one who would use them properly. Powerful wizard, perhaps.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at Darklord Aslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.
In the Domains Guild write-off, I will...
DM's Guild or the Domains Guild write-off.
The Domains Guild write-off. So it's for tax purposes.
Darklords always write off
for tax purposes, I'm a member of the clergy.